evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and the Demons overcame the heat from the media storm and the heat from the Gold Coast Sun to thrash the Gold Coast Suns to the tune of 54 points. George couldn't join us this evening, so joining me tonight to dissect what has been an up and down week for the Demons on and off the field is Binman. Good evening, Binman.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, George, if you are listening. Good evening, Demonlanders. What a terrific game of footy, terrific to watch. I enjoyed the game and the day as much as I've enjoyed a game of footy for a long time, in part because it really reminded me sort of the last time we weren't in contention at this time of the year was 2016, really, wasn't it? Because 2017, right to the last gasp, Collingwood, we only missed out by 0.5. So it feels like a throwback, but all of the time I barracked for the D's, it's like, without being facetious, for 90% of the time I barracked for the D's for 45 years or whatever it is, or longer. It's, you take the wins and celebrate the wins, like, because finals so rarely have been in the picture. And so in some ways it was good that we weren't still sort of mathematically a chance to make finals, because I just enjoyed the game for the game. I really love the spirit in the club. I really love the way 𝗦cie attacked the game. I really love the evident sort of enthusiasm and effort that they showed on the day. It was just terrific. And it was interesting last week. I mentioned that on the board that faces the players against Port, that the headline across the board was unity, and it was the theme of the week. If you listen to the sort of goodies presser during the week, he mentioned unity multiple times, and it seemed to be a real theme this week, unity, and obviously the sort of track stuff's, I guess, all in that sort of mix. But yeah, I just really enjoyed that game of footy as a standalone win, and I'm so jealous that I wasn't there like you were.
I think you're forgetting 2019 when we were out of contention pretty much a couple of rounds into the
That's right. It was 2019. That's true. Fair enough. Well, that's another year added to the pyre of failed seasons.
2020, we were right in it until the last game of the round when we were barracking for, I think, the Bulldogs or Freo or someone to win so that we could scrape into finals. But alas, this year is not to be. And it's actually disappointing that this game this week, and we'll talk about it a bit later, is a dead rubber. At least even if we're not in contention, if we had the chance to snuff out the Pies finals chances, that would have been our grand final this year.
Totally. I was so hoping for the
West
Pies
Coast
to win, the Blues to lose, for it to be, to have a real, for us to be able to knock them out would have just been joyous. So,
and I'll talk about it later, it's going to affect the crowd numbers as well, so that's going to affect our coffers and all that, because Pies fans might stay away. I don't know.
They've still got a chance, and
they have to win by a lot and hope someone loses by a lot. It's not a chance. We could lose by 100.
To win for a start, they've got no chance if they don't win for 100 by 100 points plus.
Yes.
So I wonder what their mindset for the game will be. Do you go out and attack the game?
I guess they have to, but I think they probably think they can't anyway. But who knows? They'll certainly
might
give
be
it
a game to have a bet on the over total match point, because if they just go freewheeling, no reason why we won't as well. So
yeah. All right, let's get stuck in. We've got a lot to talk about. There's been a lot going on in the club this week, but before that, just some housekeeping, because each week I do put out that call to our loyal listeners to help us out by leaving us a 5-star review, a comment on Apple Podcast as well. We love the feedback, and we do reward our loyal listeners who do take that time to provide us with these 5-star reviews, and we do give them a shout out on the show, like we're going to do right now to Praise B, who says, a delightful podcast, win or lose. This podcast is a must listen for Demon fans. Great banter between the three hosts, Andy, George and Binman. Every week I learn something new about the team, players and game I love. The commentary is head and shoulders above the senseless waffle of the mainstream media nuffies. I think my favourite new segment is Binman's Rant, We haven't heard that in a few weeks. Maybe we'll bring it back this week. I love his positive words about Goody, and I'm happy to hear all the negative. Nancy supporters be called out for their non-support. Thanks, guys, and go D's. Thank you to Praise Be for that great review. Keep that feedback coming, and we will give you a shout out on the show. As always, if you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you want to leave us feedback or post a question or a comment for the show, post under our podcast post each week, or you can slide into the DMs. In addition to being available on Apple, Google, Spotify, SoundCloud, and or any of your preferred podcasting apps, the Demonland podcast is available to be watched and listened to with our cartoon likenesses on YouTube. Just search for Demonland Podcast to find our channel. If you want to chat with our other Demon fans and you've never been to our forum, boy, it's a great time to be out on Demonland. Head on over to demonland.com, sign up. You can chat with other Demon fans from across Australia and around the world. It's completely free. And in addition to be ranting about the Ds or just you want to see what's happening with all of our star players and you want to post a question, post or a comment for the show, there's lots of topics about everything to do with the Ds. So join in on the conversation. And if you'd like to join us on the air tonight to talk about any of the topics that we're going to talk about, give us a call, 0390163666. It's 0390163666. I'll answer, I'll put you on mute, bring you on when there's a break in the conversation. And during the week, you can call that number, leave a message, we'll play it out on the show. And if you're listening live, head on over to the chat room, demonland.com/podcast. We are live every Monday. So if you want to listen to the show live, head on over to demonland.com on Mondays nights at 7:30 p.m. I'll get into the match overview while I open the chat room. I forgot to open that before we started. Yep, all good to go. In a dead rubber at People's First Stadium, the Demons delivered a resounding 54-point victory over the Gold Coast Suns, sending a clear message to their critics and fans alike. The Demons, who entered the match on a 4-game losing streak, showed they were far from a club in crisis despite the intense media scrutiny and significant on-field and off-field challenges. Melbourne's triumph was characterised by a dominant final quarter where they kicked 7 goals to blow out the margin and finished with a 54-point victory. The victory highlighted the resilience and depth of a Demon side missing key players like Clayton Oliver, Christian Petracca and Stephen May. The star of the show was undoubtedly 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗃, who amid swirling rumours about his future, delivered a performance for the ages. 𝗃𝗀 amassed 30 disposals, 13 contested, 10 score involvement, 9 clearances, and kicked 2 crucial goals, including a brilliant snap from the pocket that effectively sealed the game early in the fourth quarter. His leadership on the field was instrumental in steering the Demons to victory, particularly in the absence of other star midfielders. Ed Langdon also stood out tirelessly, working the wing and collecting 37 disposals, 9 contested, 8 score involvements and a goal in a performance that kept the Demons in control throughout the match. Melbourne's forward line, often a point of criticism this season, finally clicked with Daniel Turner 4 goals, Harrison Petty and Jacob Van Rooyen 3 goals each, providing the firepower that has been lacking in recent weeks. The match started evenly with both teams locked at 3 goals apiece at quarter time. However, Melbourne began to assert themselves in the second quarter, taking a narrow 6-point lead into the main break. Third quarter saw the Ds extend their lead slightly, but it was in the final term that they truly broke the game open. With the midfield dominance led by 𝗃𝗀 and support from Max Gawn, who held his own against the Suns' Jared Witts, Melbourne outclassed Gold Coast in clearances 45-36, and particularly in centre clearances 18-7. Melbourne's strategy was clear: dominate the stoppages and apply relentless pressure in the midfield to create scoring opportunities. And this was evident in their 12 goals, 3 score from stoppages, the second highest of any team this season. The Demons also managed to stifle the Suns' ball movement, particularly in the second half where the hosts could only muster 2 goals. This win, while not enough to resurrect Melbourne's finals hopes, is significant for several reasons. It demonstrated the team's character and ability to perform under pressure, challenging the narrative of a club in turmoil. It also gave a glimpse of what the Demons could achieve in 2025 with a revitalised lineup and renewed focus. The victory at People's First Stadium was more than just a win. It was a statement against a backdrop of doubt and speculation. The Demons showed that they can still be a force to be reckoned with. Led by the indomitable 𝗟𝗃𝘀𝘁𝗃, the team proved that despite the challenges, they can still rise to the occasion and deliver. And as they look towards next season, their performance might just be the spark that they need to ignite a successful campaign in 2025. But first, Friday night against the Magpies will tell us a little bit more.
Good work, Andy. Excellent work. So, just a couple of thoughts, though. I wanted last week at the end of the show, you're right, it was a hopeless review of this game because I was still sort of dealing with the fact that our season was dead and another brutal close loss. And so I wanted to share something before we jump into the stats file, a couple of reflections on the game, one of which I had a conversation direct message from a loyal listener, 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁. So shout out to 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝘁 who direct messaged me on through Demonland, and we had a bit of a chat, one of which was about punting. And so it's evident that I wasn't smart after the fact. I said that in terms of tips this weekend, that let's have a look at what did I write. Is that I thought the Ds were terrific value. So I'm going to just read this out. So I punt into a bank with a mate. Shout out to Greg. Have done so for 20 plus years, and I do most of the selecting. He's banned us betting on the Ds because I get it wrong too often. I'm too optimistic, he reckons, and he's probably got a fair point.
And where would he get that idea from? I'm
going to try and convince him to back us this week, as I reckon we're way overs, both at the 16-point line and the $3.06 for a win. Sure, the Suns deserve to be favourite. They're playing at home, have won 2 of their last 5, are coming off a win, and we have lost our last 4. But digging a bit deeper, one of their 3 losses was against the Eagles, and another 39-point drubbing by the Giants. Sure, we got touched up by Freo and Dogs, but both were flying. And we went down by less than a goal against Port and the Giants, who are second and third on the ladder, respectively, before the game. And I think that's still the case, isn't it? They're second and third on the ladder. That's okay form. So I wrote this all before the game, obviously. And we're both on the same number of points, so very, very similar form-wise over the season. The other factor is the psychological one. Sometimes middling sides are flat after a close, exciting win like the ones the Suns had the previous week after the siren over the Bombers. They had to travel down to Melbourne for that, so there's travel involved. And I reckon we'll be fired up to win for Nibbler, such is the regard he's held in. I think our selection is evidence of that this week. Only one change, and not playing Jefferson to give him a taste of senior footy. And the Suns play a very similar style to us, and I don't think have the leg speed and spread that causes us so much trouble at the moment. Put all of that into the value blender, and I reckon the true odds are something like 260 to win and a 10-point line. I actually think we'll win, but that's why my mate banned bet D's bets. But I might convince him to agree to the line bet because I think he'll agree it's value. And tragically, 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝘁𝘁, my mate, would not come at the bet at all. So, Greg, if you're listening, you should listen to me more often, at least when it comes to D's bets, or not, as the case may be.
Well, 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝘁𝘁, if you can write in or call in and let us know if that is actually what the man said and he's not just backtracking of his poor performance last week.
So when we spoke last week, Nibbler hadn't retired, and I was convinced that they were. Like, I reckon that photo afterwards and the energy, there's a bit of retro stuff, retrofitting the track narrative in there, but I reckon that's all about Nibbler. Like, he is held in such high regard.
There were people on Demonland trying to suggest, it was a middle finger to track, and I really don't think the club would do that, particularly when they're trying their hardest to get him back on side, and we'll talk more about track in a moment. But that was all about Nibbler.
They wanted to get a win for Nibbler, wanted one more opportunity. It's in the theme song.
Yeah, that was in the presser. He wants to sing the theme song one last time. Yeah. So, that was all Nibbler, and anyone trying to paint any other narrative about that photo is delusional.
Yeah. And also the stuff in the club rooms afterwards, getting them all into the ring. That's of course.
Well, that was about a club in unity.
I don't know, but that was about Nibbler.
I don't think. Well, that wasn't just about Nibbler. The club, when the Casey boys were there because they played in the curtain raiser.
But they brought
But that was about a club in unity. That was more of an FU to the media and anyone saying that we're in club in crisis turmoil. I mean, there is some relation to track there, but it wasn't a middle finger to him or anything to do with that. I really don't think it is.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
let's
that's a fair point. And that's
But
why
there was
I loved it.
Nibbler
Like,
too.
it
It was
was the
singing the
energy
song with
there.
him too. Yeah, there was definitely Nibbler involved in that, but that was also it was a good opportunity. And they brought all the players up pretty much. I think only Track wasn't there, and I mean that there's probably something to be read into that as well. But Maisie wasn't there because I think his missus is expecting, and obviously Joel Smith wasn't there, which is no surprise. But every other player was there. They brought everyone up. I saw Caleb Windsor up there because I was on the plane with a number of the boys. I saw Clary. A lot of the injured players were up there as well, obviously all the Casey boys. So it was good to get them all together, show a bit of unity.
And just two comments before the next segment. But the first comment is that, I wouldn't be reading too much into this victory. It's not a litmus test on it. Yeah. It's not but what it did show is how strong our culture is, how great a leader Goody is. His presser during the week was just inspirational. Like, it was just awesome. I thought we'll talk about this later with Track, but I've been a big critic of the club's communication for a long time, and I think that's really the key issue that's sort of swirling around. And so I couldn't have been more impressed with Goody's sort of the way he communicated his position and where the club's at. The other thing, though, is that to me it raised a flag for Suns. No wonder Hardwick was so furious. Their last game at home, and they played a team that were looking forward to the break. And we played that often happens when you're out of contention. So, probably it's perhaps a little unfair to bag them for that. But it just shows the difference when one team's super motivated and up and about and the other team, isn't at 100%. The gap between any clubs these days is massive. And Hardwick was rightfully furious with their players afterwards. But I just thought it was a great case study in two clubs, a club that in the Suns that I think I really want the Suns to be successful. Same with the Giants. It's like we've, the whole footy has invested so much money in them, it would make no sense for them not to be. So, I hope they do become a successful club, but it just showed the sort of culture that we've got and how long that takes to build. And, they didn't look like they turned up, which their fans must have just been aghast at.
And their whole, I was at the game, so their whole thing was to thank the members for the season, which you probably didn't see, but I saw in the pre-game, it was all about thanking the members and, for sticking with them and, that they're building something. I think they're really disappointed that they didn't have a positive ledger for the year, and losing this match added to that and sort of ensured that they wouldn't get that.
Well, one thing, have you watched the replay?
No, I've just watched the 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁 highlights.
They must have mentioned 432 times that it was their opportunity to win 11 games for the first time in their – come on. Now, the other comment just before we roll on was, did you do your homework?
What homework did I have?
Did you look at the board at quarter time and three-quarter time?
I told you I don't have binoculars, and no, I did not.
Find a workaround?
Anyway, I wouldn't have been able to see it because I was sitting on the opposite side of the ground, and I know binoculars would have helped.
I don't want to hear why you couldn't do it.
I probably had one job. I don't know where they held the board up. How do you see it actually from where you sit? Because isn't the coach sort of facing? Oh, he's back to you?
I start with my binoculars. I start stalking the dude who writes it on the board when they're in the interchange bench.
Okay.
And sometimes he spins it in his hands, and I grab a little bit more info. But
anyway, I was off to the bathroom at each break.
Too much information, Andy.
All right, let's get into their questions, and we're going to start with Christian Petracca because that's all anyone on Demonland has been talking about, and anyone in the media world and social media has been talking about. So Red Jacket says, let's not bury the lead here. What are the panel's thoughts on the whole Christian Petracca situation? So in case you've been living under a rock the past week, you'd have known that just before our broadcast, actually last week, a major story broke involving one of Melbourne Football Club's biggest stars, Christian Petracca. Tom Morris of Channel 9 reported that Petracca was reportedly disgruntled and disillusioned with the direction of the club, sparking intense speculation that he might consider seeking a trade if he wasn't already locked into a long-term contract. And to give you a bit of background on how this all unfolded, let's break down the key events chronologically. It all began during the Demons' King's birthday clash against Collingwood, where Petracca suffered severe and season-ending injuries. He endured 4 broken ribs, a lacerated spleen and a punctured lung, which not only ended his 2024 campaign, but also left him and allegedly his family very frustrated, particularly with how the club handled his injuries and recovery process. As Petracca embarked on the long road to recovery, whispers began circulating that he was growing increasingly disillusioned with the Melbourne Football Club's direction. It was important to note that this dissatisfaction wasn't aimed at coach Simon Goodwin, but was instead rooted in broader concerns about the club's future strategy and its handling of player welfare. The situation escalated when Tom Morris reported that Petracca was disgruntled and might consider exploring a trade despite being tied to the Demons with a contract that runs until 2029. This bombshell report naturally set off a flurry of expectation and speculation and anxiety amongst the Demon faithful. And of course, Demonland has been at DEFCON 1. We're now at over, 1,900 posts on the topic in just a week. And in response, Melbourne CEO's 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁𝘀𝗁 quickly moved to quell rumours, releasing a statement that underscored Petracca's importance to the club's future. Pert made it clear that Petracca is seen as a key pillar of the team and categorically dismissed the idea that the club would entertain any trade discussions involving their star player. Coach Simon Goodwin also publicly backed Petracca, stating unequivocally that he would be donning the red and blue next season. And despite these reassurances, the speculation didn't die down, with some pundits even suggesting what a potential trade could look like. Most estimates included at least 2 first-round draft picks and a player, or perhaps even 3 first-round draft picks. However, Collingwood, rumoured to be Petracca's preferred destination, doesn't currently hold a first-round draft pick in the upcoming draft, making any potential trade even more complicated. And adding another layer to this saga, it was reported today that Petracca addressed the playing group at the club amidst all the swirling rumours. And it's reported, but not confirmed, that during this meeting he aimed to clarify the situation, sharing the physical and emotional toll his injuries had taken on him since that fateful King's birthday match, where he suffered those life-threatening injuries, including, as I said, the ruptured spleen, the broken ribs and the lacerated lung. There was also unconfirmed reports suggesting that some players in the team were frustrated with Petracca's decision to travel to 𝗟𝗻𝗀 while recovering. However, Captain Max Gawn has publicly denied any such discord, explaining that the trip had been approved by the club and that there was no ill will among the players regarding Petracca's time away. As of now, neither Petracca nor his management has made any official statement publicly about the situation, leaving fans and analysts alike in suspense about what might happen in this ongoing saga. So, big man, what's your take on all of this?
Geez, can I do my stats file after this, Andy?
Oh, wait, did we miss our stats file? We did, but let's talk about Petracca first and then we'll go to the stats file.
I reckon it's a good one not to bury the lead, so that's a good call. I've got some thoughts, one of which is I think it's a massive storm in a teacup, and that's thought number one. Thought number two is the sort of...
You don't think... Could I just back you up? You don't think that he's dissatisfied and if he didn't have a contract, he'd be out of there?
Well, I don't have enough information to know whether he'd be out of there. I don't doubt at all that he's upset, frustrated, angry. I think that was evident. Look, so I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, from my perspective, this stuff has been going on in footy clubs forever. If you work at any organisation with more than 4 or 5 people, let alone a sort of ultra competitive environment full of alpha males, sort of 44 players all striving, who are all elite athletes who, myopic in their drive, surrounded by the administrative staff and, what's that? Probably 200 people at a footy club all up, or 150 people all up. These sorts of dramas have been going on, since Adam was a boy. It was, I think, for me, there's a few things that are happening. One, the rise of the player managers. 2, the sort of the parasitic relationship between player managers and the AFL media, and in particular, strategic leaking. I mean, that's been going on forever and a day too, but it used to be much more minimal. Then you've got, it would be Sheehan or, whatever, or Caroline Wilson or, it wasn't had the rocket fuel of social media. I mean, it's remarkable, that thread on Demonland. We were joking about it going up last week. How many posts did you say there are now?
I think I'm just clicking on it now. There's 1,872.
What's that in 7 days? So, we're getting up at 2.5. What's that? 200 posts a day, more, 250 posts a day about Christian Petracca. And like, I'm not being facetious here, but like, I'm not on any social media, so I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on whatever, Twitter or X or whatever it is. And so Demonland's really sort of like a vox pop, or my window into what a whole bunch of D's fans think. And I'm sure there's more rabid sort of commentary out there at Facebook, is from what you've told me before. But it's incredible how, how it drives content. So when I say I'm not being facetious, you've often said this sort of stuff drives content like crazy on Demonland. When we lose, when there's drama, and to be honest, on a bigger topic, that's the algorithm around social media. The reason why hate and anger and car crashes gets to the top of people's feeds is not so much that that's the algorithm that that is being pushed on people. It's because that's what people want. People want the drama. And so as much as I really dislike the sort of style of journalism of Morris and all of that, if there's no demand for it, it doesn't happen. It's there's plenty of demand for it. And that's what I mean by mountain and molehill. So I don't doubt at all that there was substance to his anger. And I said that at the time. It was clear, you could tell. I mean, and for me, the other issue is that I noted before, the club's comms have been appalling for a long time. And so I'm really pleased to hear that they've headhunted someone from Collingwood. I'm not sure whether they're there yet, whether she's come to the club yet.
Someone asked the question on Demonland and no one had an answer for
There's
it. So
been poor communication about our new communications director. And if you look, to be honest, it's our poor communication as a club is the single most common thread in all of this stuff. Look right back to last year, all of the drama around 𝗟𝗀, and how long he was going to take to come back from his hammy and what was happening in, all of the stuff about Grundy. He's going back to the VFL to play, to become a forward. The fallout from Grundy not getting selected, the off-season stuff, the Smith stuff, the 𝗟𝗀 not turning up, or 𝗟𝗄𝐿𝐶ie, or having to come home from 𝗟𝗄𝐿𝐶ie, all of that stuff. What's the one common thread? The one common thread is how poor we've done at managing the communication. Both, I don't mean just to the members, that's just one part of the communication, but the crisis management communication, even the relationship with the media. People talk about us having I think all clubs will get in the gun. I just think other clubs like Geelong, for instance, I don't know, I'm not having a go at Stengelin or whatever, but that story disappeared like a stone in a river.
Very quickly.
He got taken home in an ambulance on a Saturday night after a game of footy. Imagine if that, you don't have to imagine it, if that was 𝗟𝗀.
If that happened tomorrow to any Melbourne player, even a choir boy one,
you would hear nothing but about it.
But because we're already a club in crisis, in turmoil, has a recent history, whether it's the media driving it or Melbourne not being able to brush it under the carpet or what.
Totally.
Because of that, we would be in the media.
I don't buy this thing that the media have got it out for Melbourne. I think that's a nonsense. I just think that we're easy, we're an easy target. And
why does that Geelong thing, are you saying they've got someone that's so good at comms that they were able to silence that?
Well, not just
or just an easy
simplistic, but a well-run club like Geelong, whatever
does
you
that
think
come
of Geelong,
down to culture, though?
Geelong have been a well-run club for 30 years. Their success of any organisation, whether it's a football club or a community service organisation, which is my sector, or any business, is on governance and how well it's managed. And so comms is just one element of it. And it's not just the comms that goes out, as I said before, it's the whole kit and caboodle. And part of good comms is having good relationships with media, is getting ahead of stories, is killing them before they become this crazy thing with track. So,
there's another example. Collingwood the other week, Craig Kelly, The pretty damning stuff came out. We don't need to repeat it here. Nothing. You don't hear anything about it. How does that get through? Some of that was pretty bad.
Well, there's other more serious stuff than bloody track and he's what's going on with track. What about what's happening with Hawthorn?
It's still a big story.
Well, it's a much bigger story.
Whenever something comes out about that whole issue with Hawthorn and the racism saga, within a day it's gone. You don't hear
it. So partly that's the band.
Is that us not having good PR? Or
that's part of it. Yes, that's part of it.
Or is it the media? Are we an easy target because of that?
Well, I think that all feeds into it, and I think so. Going back to your question, I think this seems to me, I think that it's no stretch to guess that Track was angry with the club's response after he got injured, but I think they've almost acknowledged that, and mistakes happen. Even if their comms was brilliant, even if I'm wrong and that's an unfair criticism, mistakes happen, right? And so it was, I think, what was underappreciated, and certainly by me at the time and subsequent, is how seriously hurt he was. And so people completely, I think, that the footy world's funny the way it talks. It's sort of, I don't know, like he almost could have died. He could have died, not almost could have died. From everything I read afterwards, it's splenectomy and how he easily could have died. People had died from that injury before. So he had a life and death experience. Of course that's going to change, to have an impact. It would make... particularly for someone like Track, who seems to be emotionally intelligent, and of course it's going to have an impact on him and his family, and there's even in the sort of, if the club had done nothing wrong or could everything as well as they possibly could, it wouldn't be unreasonable to think he was upset. So there's clearly all of that in the mix. I think we've contributed to it, but to give the club its due, it's been really strong. And I think what I dislike is the narrative. Why should we buy into the narrative the club's in crisis? It's a complete confection. That's where I sort of think, on Demonland, looking at Demonland as a sort of proxy for what Melbourne fans think, I'm amazed how quickly people have turned on Track.
Absolutely. He's villain number one at the moment.
Yeah. But that said, I noted about 4 days, I thought I gave mild criticism of him. I think he's overplayed his hand, right? And so the star players have been doing another thing. Star players have been doing this forever and a day, flexing. And in the NBA, for instance, it's a bit different. But star players there in the NBA, like really the big stars, they can get the coach sacked like that. Bang. If you're offside with a LeBron James or, Kevin Durant or whatever, you're gone, And so we don't want to ever go there, and not that, not suggesting that that's what happened, but it was clearly a flex. It was clearly a player manager strategic ploy. Whether he wants out or not, I talked about it last week about Track, is that I've long since stopped worrying about players leaving. The players I worry about leaving are the ones, that I love. And that's Nibbler, that's Jesse Hogan, Jack Watts, Oscar McDonald in recent times.
None of them are at the club anymore.
No, they're the players that I get upset about leaving.
Yeah.
If Track was to go, I amazed how quickly I turn it in my mind. One, saying he's just not going to go. It's a nonsense, because who could possibly come up with something for him?
That's a separate thing at the moment, because I think it's where I'm worried is the fact that he wants to go, that he doesn't. I don't know, because it's not just the Queen's birthday and the injury that he's unhappy with. Seems to be.
Well, who knows if that's true? That's supposition.
That he's unhappy with the direction of the club,
who
whether
says
it's the
that?
Coach. Well,
who says that?
That's what the media has told us.
He's unhappy with not winning. I'm unhappy with the direction of the club if we're not winning.
I know. Well, of course, but does he want to play for a big club with big crowds and
Yeah, like Collingwood. So Collingwood just missed the finals,
we don't know,
after winning the grand final.
Yeah,
right. They're on the way down. Like, I'm not writing them off.
They're not copying any heat about that either.
Well, and they're not going to be able to give us what we need. We know what track's not going. So
No.
he may be unhappy with the direction of the club. And it sounds like, again, to give credit where it's due, the club have ventilated it. They've come out, they've addressed it. They've had they started their review. They had a meeting today by the sound of it with Track, or Track had a meeting with the club. I don't know.
Track spoke to, the media report today was that he spoke to the playing group and there was just a thing on Channel 9 where Richardson faced the media, and it didn't instill me with a lot of
media
it didn't instill me with a lot of confidence, because he just sort of reiterated what I just said, but he also said the Track explained sort of why he's upset, but they didn't go into details of what he spoke about. So
I reckon, to be honest, and I wrote this today on Demonland, he's overplayed his hand, and the next part of the journey, I wish that meeting happened tomorrow, is you watch. It'll be the next part of the narrative that the media will trot out via the player manager will give this information, is a narrative arc. A redemption arc. Reconciliation arc. That'll be the next part of the story. The 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁𝘀 coming together, refocusing for next year, because he's not going anywhere. He's a professional footballer at the height of his career. He's, buckle up, or, this idea that we might let him, because he's unhappy. As an example, 𝗦cie Neal. 𝗦cie Neal had legitimate reasons to go home to Fremantle for family reasons. So there's no family reasons here. They didn't budge on 𝗦cie Neal, and we're not going to budge on Track, and nor should we. And if he wants to crack the sads, well, his legacy will be impacted. But I don't think, I can't see him doing that. That's not his nature. He's a competitive alpha who wants to win flags. And so, you could read, one, I don't believe that direction of the club stuff. If he comes out and says it, great, no worries. But I'm not going to believe stuff filtered through Tom Morris. That's just I'm not going to let the media yank my chain, and it's just, and play us like fools. I'm just not going to buy into it. But I'll tell you what, that's how quickly I flipped in terms of my thinking on Track, is to go, okay, well, yes, he's one of the best footballers I've ever seen, but, could we parlay that into some genuine leg speed and elite foot skills, which is what we need. Track isn't got elite foot skills. I mean, he's a brilliant player, but, that's where my brain went already, to a future without Track. So, I think that's what I mean by storm in a teacup.
All right, we do have a call on the line. Welcome to the Demonland podcast. Who am I talking to?
G'day, Andy. This is Dutch Demons, and this is a bit unorthodox, but you also have another Demonlander on the line here.
Hello, guys. This is Clayton Van Oliver here in Amsterdam.
Wow, I didn't realise we had friends. People on Demonland had friends, so this is a really good thing to hear. How are you guys going?
We're sitting here in the sun in Amsterdam at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, drinking beers, reflecting on the D's season. And we thought we should call in and try to address a little bit of the negativity on Demonland.
Oh, well, we always welcome that. Coming from the most negative person on the planet, I welcome some positivity in my life. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's just kind of funny looking at it all from the outside, because we live overseas, so we're not super connected to the club on the day-to-day basis. But from where we're sitting, watching the D's this season, there's just been so much which has gone wrong. But at the end of the day, we are so close to the mark still. And I just can't understand why everyone on Demonland is just melting down, when if a few bounces of the ball or whatever had gone a different way, those close losses could have easily been wins. And then we'd be still up in the mix in the top four and almost getting a grand final. And we've been so unlucky with injuries this year. There's been so much going against us. And so I actually think we've done so well compared to what could have happened,
Well,
and just aware that we have a 2-minute limit.
No, you don't have a 2-minute limit on the calls. That's on the voicemail, so you can talk for as long as you want on a call.
We'll keep going. The beers are flowing.
So before go on.
Yep, please go on.
No, you go ahead, because I've got we've got a question that sort of relates to that, so I may as well read it out now. But you go ahead with what you wanted to say.
Well, just on my 2 cents, being away from Australia, as Dutch Demons said, does give you a bit more space to reflect on it all. And honestly, in my 37 years of being a Melbourne supporter, there's never been a better time. And I think it's very easy to carry those generational sort of traumas with following such a crap football team for so long. But those days are done. We follow a good football team and a good club, and we might have a year or here or there where we fall out, but we will regenerate and we will be back.
Yes, let's hope so. So I'll just read this. You guys can stay on the line. I'll just read this from 𝗏𝗍𝗍. It says, huge result to be the only interstate team to down the Suns up there. We've now won 11 games so far this season when the footy gods have thrown everything at us, including the kitchen sink. The 4 games we've lost by under a goal this year have been costly. Lions by 5, Power and Giants by 2, and the Blues by 1 point. If we'd just won 2 of these, we'd probably be playing finals. If we'd won all 4 of these games, we'd be in the top 4 or even top 2. I think many other sides would be far lower than 12th this season if they had that kind of year that we've had up the Redleggers. Bin Matt, you can ask the waitress to give us some beer too. So Bin Man, this post sounds like you wrote it, but it's a bit of a coulda, shoulda, woulda. Are we unlucky to not be in finals contention? Are we where we should be? It has been the season from hell. We're not through the worst of it yet, and there's a lot to still play out during the trade week and all that inevitable external review of the club, whatever happens. What are your brief thoughts on
Well, it hasn't been a season from hell. That's the media.
We are not in finals. We got all this turmoil.
What turmoil are we in, Andy? It's all a construct that, you can choose to buy into it or choose not to buy into it. I talked about well-run clubs, and Geelong have been a well-run club for 30 years. They won a flag, in 22?
22,
They didn't make the finals last year. They're top 4 this year. That's what good clubs do. They've been up around the mark now for 11 or 12 years. And when Goody came on board in his first press conference, that's what he said he wanted to build at the D's, is a club that is perennially in the premiership window. And as 𝗏𝗍𝗍 points out, we were very close to making finals, very close to going deep, really even season. What's really important to note is the incredible sort of run of players that we've had out. Like, we've had, on top of all of that, we started the season essentially 7 senior players down. If you think Gus was out, so our list goes down to 43. Smith's out, our list goes down to 42. We've had Hunter barely play a senior game. We've had Benny Brown barely play a senior game. We had Melk out for half a season. We've had May missing big blocks of game. We've had Lever missing big blocks of game. We've had Track missing half the season. And I'm sure I'm missing, 1 or 2 players. I've seen
Petty was out for a bit. Spargo's been out the whole year.
McAdams hardly, he missed a good chunk of the season. That's 7 or 8 senior players who,
Salem.
That's probably Salem. That's probably close to 1,000 games of AFL football that we've not been able to put on the park, forcing us to play one of the youngest sides in the AFL. I read a stat we're only behind North Melbourne and I think one other club of playing the most debutants this year. Like, this is a team that was pushing for finals all year. So I just the season from hell narrative is I just won't buy it. And I'm super confident about where we're at and where we're going to be next year.
Yeah, exactly. And just on that, and sorry about the noise, just giving you guys a bit of ambient.
That's all right. Love it.
Just on that, like the whole idea of building a model similar to Geelong or Sydney, Melbourne fans don't know what that looks like. It's completely new for us all. So everyone just needs to chill out and understand that we are in a completely new and different phase to anything we've been in before.
And also, over here in Amsterdam, there aren't that many people who watch Aussie Rules, but one of my best mates here is a Hawthorn fan. And they've not been very good for the last few years, but he's never got super depressed about where the Hawks are.
He just stops watching.
Yeah. He's never melted down like what you read on Demonland. And now this year, he's just feels like they're back in their normal place as they're fighting for finals. And that's where the D's are at. And we as supporters need to take on that mindset a little
Show up, be there. We can't be there. So please, if you can be there, go for us, because we would love to.
I think that's such a great point. I've got two mates that are huge Hawthorn fans and a mate who's a Cats fan, and like that's exactly what they say. In their down years, it's like, oh, whatever, whatever, we'll be back, no worries. But even with the Hawks, they went right down to the bottom with Mitchell. There was never any real stress about it because there was an expectation it wouldn't take long for them to be up the top. Melbourne fans seem to have an expectation even when we're at the top that we'll fall backwards and fall into the pack. And then when it happens, when we don't make the finals, it's like, oh, see, I told you. It becomes a fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. And I'm not trying to say that as a crack at Melbourne fans. Like, I'm so stoked that we have like a supporter base which normally do show up and do care so much. So I hope no one sees that as a criticism. But just like, don't get too down in the dumps, everyone. It's not as bad as the media would make you think, and it's not as bad as your own mind is trying to make you think either. Anyways, guys, we'll let you go.
Yeah. And just the last point, we do have the Melbourne Demons unofficial museum in Amsterdam. So anyone who's travelling over, feel free to hit us up.
So what does that? What does the museum?
So much,
what does the museum consist of?
We've got a poster of the D's win, the Herald Sun. We've got a poster of the
AFLW team grand final win. We've got a signed Max Gawn jersey hanging on the wall. So.
And we want more. So anyone who comes over, bring us stuff to the unofficial Amsterdam Melbourne Demons Museum.
Love it. Love it.
And what beer are you drinking, just so we can get a taste for Amsterdam?
It's an Amsterdam local one called 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁. It's
a wheat beer.
It's, I think, 6.8%. It's delicious.
Well, drink responsibly.
Yeah, it compels you to call up your favourite podcast. So.
Fantastic. Love it, guys. Thank you for your support.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you, George. Thank you, Ben Man, for everything you do. We listen religiously every week. This podcast is so valuable for people who can't get to the game. So thank you so much for everything.
Fantastic.
And big hello to my old man in the US.
Oh, well, fantastic. Excellent. Guys, really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your call and thank you for listening. Love it. Call in again, definitely.
Go D's.
Go D's.
Go D's. All right. That was fantastic. That was Dutch Demons and Clayton Van Oliver all the way from Amsterdam. Love it. Absolutely fantastic.
When it's hot in Amsterdam, it's Dutch oven.
Well, there you go. Thank you for that.
I laboured that one. Sorry.
Anything else you want to say on track before we go into your stats files?
Oh, just everyone take a step back and let it play out. And he's not going anywhere. The chances of him going anywhere are close to zero.
If he is gone? If he requests a trade and says,
"Well,
I want to go,"
trade him.
All right, do you think we will not? We will. Because I get the impression that Melbourne, I'm not quite there. Oh, we get bent over a barrel. Pardon the visual of that in trade week. Do you think we'll hold him to the contract, or do you think we'll make a deal?
I mean, if you believe
forget the media.
The narrative is that's just a sort of confected narrative. But if you believe that he wants to go to a quote unquote big club, who's that?
He can't go to Collingwood. That unless they're giving Nick Dacos or really players have to cut like.
The
top five players have to come.
If he wanted to stay in Victoria and go to a legitimately big Victorian club,
well, big successful. Are we talking successful?
That we would be interested in is the Tigers, and that's their number one draft.
But they're not. I don't think he would want to go to the. If he, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just playing getting played into the media.
What about this? Here's the biggest club in the AFL. Is arguably, Collingwood, most would say. Pretty close would be West Coast. They've got 30,000 people on their waiting list to become a member.
From the impression that I get, and I don't know if I'm just getting fooled by the media, is that he wants to. If he does want to go, he wants to go to a team that's in contention now. So it sort of puts a line through Richmond. Sure, they've got the draft picks to satisfy us, but also Richmond are in a rebuilding phase. They don't want to give up 2 first-round draft picks for Petracca, who is 29 years old, as good as he is and can be. And we're not even convinced that if he doesn't overcome this injury, all right, that's a separate side. So maybe there's a line through Richmond. There is one club that probably could satisfy us and satisfy him in terms of the crowds and the big Victorian club, and that's Carlton. But Carlton would have to give us 2 first-round picks and a player
No,
like
they were two
Mackay.
first-round picks. Their first-round pick this year is going to be
I
what?
know.
They're
Well,
gonna finish in
that's
the
not
eight.
good for us. It's not good for us because Carlton in the next 2 years, their first round picks are going to be high
So
or late
the only
first
way,
round picks.
The only way we do any deal is if we come out on top. The same way that Geelong came out on
Will we
top
though?
when they traded Kelly to West
They
Coast.
got three first round draft picks.
Exactly. And that was way overs. So
Yeah.
we do not trade unless we get overs. And overs in this situation, if it was with Carlton, they'd literally have to give us Mackay, their first rounder this year, their first rounder next year, and probably, one of those mid-size Cotterell or something to help us with our running and, because otherwise the deal doesn't get done. But we don't even need forwards, not in terms of, we've got forwards clunking them all, marks all over the place. So I just can't see how any of those power clubs that are in the window for a premiership can do anything to satisfy what we want. West Coast. Go to West Coast. We'll take Harley Reid and we'll take Barras, Harley Reid, and maybe Oscar Allen. Bang, deal done.
All right. I just got to worry that Melbourne play nice in trade week. If he
We won't be
requests a
playing
trade,
nice.
we might.
Why would we play nice with track?
I don't know. I just, this is my pessimism coming out.
Right.
So, anyway, all right. Let's get into your stats. Apologies for that. I got excited.
Well, no, it's a good call to not bury the lead. That was you got influenced by that the question.
Yes, I did absolutely. So we didn't bury the lead, but now we're going to dive into.
I'll race
stats.
through it this week. So this was the perfect example of the red and blueprint. It finally came, and I'll say.
Can I ask a question first before you get into that?
Yeah.
What took us to get to this? Do you think the shackles were unleashed, the pressure was off, the whatever? We'll hear about what happened, but was it why? Why did it happen?
Partly, but look, to be honest, I think this is what I keep talking about in terms of,
or was it Gold
when you get
Coast?
two clubs playing each other and one's running on top of the ground and one isn't putting in hard, then you'll get blowouts. It's what's been happening all season. And
but we haven't been able to finish a game over the last few weeks, and then in
we
the sweltering heat.
Come on, Andy, not been listening to me.
The last quarters.
Well, our last quarters have been okay since, they've been relatively okay in the last few weeks. We almost beat Port. We almost beat Giants. Before that, we kicked 5 goals against 2, was it? We kicked 5 goals 2 weeks in a row. Ironically, we're playing our best football in August.
Okay. All right, I'll stop interrupting.
So, and also too, I mean, it's probably fair to say we were, free and attacking and going for it. We were desperately defensive against Port because that was our best, as we talked about it, at length, that was our best shot at beating them. So this was the sort of example of a game that was what they want to be playing. So still there's talk on Demonland about, great, it was great to see us playing more attacking footy. This is what we've been trying to implement all season. So on Demonland, there's a thread called Stats Files. It includes information from Willow Ratings, who puts up a table, and one of the tables has got disposal efficiency, kicking efficiency, meters gained, inside 50, about 15 different stats, about 20 actually. And purple in his colouring or his sort of code is when we're up, and this week it's a sea of purple. It looks awesome. So disposal efficiency, couldn't believe it, 77 plus 6, kicking efficiency plus 9, 72 to 0.3 to 63. A big part of that was, I think their lack of run and spread to put pressure on the kick, although the pressure was better than I thought it would be when I saw the numbers. So still, that's probably our best kicking effort for many a week, 72.3. Meters gained, we were plus 700, which is massive, particularly given we played a transition back half game of footy. We had, as evidenced by the fact we only had 5 more inside 50s. So even though we were 700 metres gained, that only parlayed into 5 more 50s. We had 29 shots at goal, though, so we're plus 11, smashed them on that front. We had 53.7% of the time we went inside 50. We had a shot on goal. They only had 36.7, and on in the purple zone. So impressive. Just quickly, time in forward half this week, as evidenced that we weren't playing that forward half, that we were playing, the red and blue print. For the match, it was 45-55. The last quarter was 58-42, and that's partly because they stopped to a walk. I reckon Suns, and as much as anything, they were either not fit, which I don't think they were ever super fit this season, the Suns, or they really sort of put the cue in the rack late, which is probably a big reason why Hardwick was so furious. So it was 58-42. In the second quarter, it was 37 to 63. 63% of the time the ball was in their forward half, which is remarkable. 45-55 for the match. So last week the meters gained was minus 143 against Port. In this it was plus 698. Huge. So in terms of the red and blue print, almost the perfect example of what Goodie's been trying to implement this week. Defence, so the pillars of the red and blue print are defence, contest, transition, back half football, scores from defensive half and turnover being the two key indicators, and fitness. And again, that's sort of key to our game but hard to measure. Defence, opposition score. It was a great game for us in terms of our expected score. The expected score was 102 and we scored 117. Their expected score was 61.8 and almost bang on. Their score was 63. So to keep them to 63 in attacking side on their home deck on a perfect day for footy was a very impressive effort. Intercepts, last week we were +2 for intercepts and -3 for intercept marks. This week, not radically different numbers, +4 for intercepts and -1 for intercept marks. Again, that's probably, last week was very much an older style Goodie game of forward half and territory and create contest. And this week was much more sort of that free-flowing turnover from the back half, but almost identical intercept numbers. Marks inside 50 last week was, we were down 6. This week +8, 16-8. And I thought that was really impressive. Our marks on inside 50. When that game is going, that's so exciting to watch, and I'm sure D's fans have been wanting to see it all season. When you get multiple players running in waves, you get free players inside 50, and that's what happened this week. I thought really good work defending transition. We're averaging 31.6 points against from the back half this year, and they could only manage 16 points from their back half, so half of our season average. Whereas we got 46 points from our back half to 31. So great. We did a really good work defending their transition. The Ds were only +5 in inside 50s, but we were able to take far greater advantage of our opportunities, kicking a goal from 33% of our entries, where the Suns scored a goal from only 18% of their entries. Contested possessions, this number just keeps on talking about what you just noted before about fitness. I mean, what an effort last week. Just 160 to 130 contested possessions, +30. A team who, by the way, came out and smashed the Crows, really. A second on the ladder, going to get a home final. I think that's important context. This week, we were +10, so 121 to 111. Impressive number. And I think, from memory, I saw the stat come up. We were down contested possessions by about 6 or 7, I think, from after about 5 or 6 minutes. And I thought, oh my God, here we go. And from that point, we really turned it around. And there was one person who I'm sure we'll talk to who really turned it around, which was 𝗦cie, Jack 𝗦cie's performance in this game was just, it's capital L leader. He was just totally awesome. In our forward 50, we had 3 contested marks. They only can manage 2. Post clearance, loose ball gets 43 to 32 +11. So that really emphasises, I think, our want and our ability to run and get that loose ball and to get it out into the open. We looked as really the best we've played all season in that sense. Contested marks, 11 in total, post clearance to 5. So we really took a lot of those marks down the line after we won the footy in the clearance, or lost it, I guess, and really terrific game from the 3 talls up forward. Big part of Goodie's strategy is built around those forwards. And I thought it was really revealing again that he emphasised in the presser that cohesion is huge in sport, and that he noted that those 3, Turner, Petty and JVR have now played 12, 13, 14 games together. They're not going anywhere as a forward unit. We can expect those three to line up in round one next year in the forward line. Pressure last week was 179 to 186. Interestingly, it was only slightly high this week, 181 to 175 plus 6 for the match. So, it wasn't as if they completely turned up their toes pressure-wise. I just don't think they ran hard enough, whether that was effort, psychological, or they're even less fit than we are. 184 to 171 plus 13 in that first quarter was huge, and we were down on that pressure gauge after about 10 minutes, so we really turned it around in that last 20 minutes, and again, I reckon that was Jack Viney going hell for leather. What I loved coming out at three-quarter time was our highest pressure rating for the match, 197 after the long break to 174 plus 23, game over right there. Pressure is just so critical in modern footy. Pressure points, I love this table. One player stood out, and of course you won't be surprised who it is, Jack Viney, 31 pressure acts. His season average is 57 pressure points. 83 pressure points in this match, not quite double, but geez, that's incredible. That's amazing in terms of the pressure he implied. I just admire him so much as a footballer and the way he goes about the sport. I just love this. This was huge. I'm really, really bullish about this young fella. Colton Tholstrup, he had 24 pressure acts, 53 pressure points. His season average is 37. A really impressive game of footy from the young fella. My favourite player, probably up there, to be honest, in my top 10 favourite players of all time at the D's. 20 pressure acts, 51 pressure points, season average of 53.7. Of course, I'm talking about Alex Neal-Bullen, Trent Rivers and Cade Chandler rounded out the top 5. Last week, we were plus 10 for ground ball gets. This week, we were plus 8, 82 to 74. It continues a theme that's been in place since the bye. We've really upped our game in the ground ball gets. Tackles, last week, we were plus 12 for tackles inside 50. Interestingly, bang on 9 each, so we were level for that this week, and only 3 tackles more than them, 50 to 47. Clearances, just raw totals on clearances. Last week we were down 1 for centre clearances and down 3 for stoppage clearances. This week, amazingly, we were 18 to 7 from centre clearances, so plus 11. But around the ground, interestingly, only 27 to 29. We're down 2, so only plus 9 in terms of raw numbers. One of the interesting things was that we only had one more hit out to advantage, which I thought was really curious when I saw the stats. We had 32 to 29, so it was that was last week, 32 to 39 hit outs. This week we had 40 to 34 hit outs, so only 6 more. And hit outs to advantage, in fact, they had 1 more than us, so we had 1 less hit out to advantage than they did. Last week, we took 13 contested marks, 7 more than Port did. This week, we took 11 contested marks, 3 of which were inside 50, 6 more than 11 to 5 in total contested marks. Again, the red and blue print, after dominating contested possessions last week, being plus 30 against Port, we had a different approach in this game. As I said, it was the perfect example of what Goody's been trying to implement all season, being plus 49 in uncontested possessions, which was our greatest differential this season. We did to them what other clubs have been doing to us. We spread them and really hurt them. And Eddie Langdon, he dominated on the wing. He had 35 disposals, and incredibly, 27 of them were uncontested possessions, his highest total for the season, and he kicked a goal to boot. Transition from back half, so is important part of this model. Last week, 37, 28 they scored against us. This week, 46 from our back half, season average 31, and they could only manage, as I mentioned before, 16 to us against our season average of 31.6. So we did a great job of containing their transition, and not bad. They like to transition the ball as well. I guess most clubs do. Scores from turnover, this was the big one last week. It was down 2 from turnover, plus 2 from around the ground stoppages or non-centre bounces, and minus 8 from centre bounces, and plus 6 from kick-in. That was last week. But this week we scored another goal from the kick-in, which was great. Centre bounces, this was awesome. Plus 17, 5 goals, 1. 31 just shows how important accuracy is to 2 goals to 14. So 6 to 4. Really, it's about taking advantage of them. So it's about making impact with them, not just the raw numbers of clearances. And around the ground stoppages, we smashed them, even though like just the raw numbers. What did I say the raw numbers were? So around the ground was 27 to 29. So they had 2 more stoppage wins around the ground, yet we scored from those stoppages. This week we scored 7-2, 44 to 1 goal, 1-7, plus 37. That's where we really went to work. And what was really interesting, Andy, was that Max had his lowest rated game for many a week, only 9 and a bit. So he didn't dominate, and yet, we really went to work on their setup. So George would have been thrilled this week, because that says that, we did really good work in terms of how we prepared for the Suns and our stoppage setups and structures. And so, we lost the raw number of clearance, and it just goes to the point about it's not about how many stoppage clearances you win. It's about what you do with them. So they had more clearances than us from stoppages, yet we scored 37 more points from them. So obviously,
just on Max, he took some really good marks around the ground as well.
He did. He clunked them, and yeah, absolutely. And but he sort of took a back seat in the game, I thought. So. Yeah. The stoppage was obviously a lot about the stoppages, and I hope people don't sort of go the causal effect. Oh, Clary wasn't in there. It just,
Well, we do have someone ask a question about that soon.
I haven't read the questions properly. Yeah,
well, you can get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, the 75 points we scored from stoppages was our highest for the season and the second highest total for any team this year.
Yeah, I've read that before. So.
And it wasn't because Clary wasn't in the side.
Well, someone thinks it is.
And the 32 points we scored from centre bounce equals our season high. Just on that, this is a glimpse into the future. So centre bounce attendances, Maxi had 25 of them, Jack Viney had 23. But after that, Trent Rivers had 20. 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗃 had 18, which, a lot of D's fans would have loved to seen him in the middle. And
I thought it was less for some reason. Because said in some notes here that I wish he had more, but it sounds like he did.
18.
Yeah.
We had more than Nibble, and Nibble had 16. I thought he was excellent, actually.
Yeah.
And then Sparrow, who was off the ground pretty. When
before
did he go
halftime? It was before halftime, because it took a while for even after halftime for Melksham to be subbed in.
Right, so he had 6. I thought it was really interesting that 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗃 went in there so often.
He went in from the first centre bounce.
Was it? I was going to ask that, because I was wondering whether that was because Sparrow was off. He was in there from the get-go.
First centre bounce. Yep.
Right, so I think that probably that gives us a window into what they're thinking with him.
Well, and they have to keep it going for next. We'll only go one more week, but why not?
Yeah. I mean, I said it a few weeks ago. I see him as our Nick Dacos. He's a gun, that kid, and floating between halfback and going into the middle, he's going to be our weapon. Kozzy had 4 and the Colt had 3, and as I said before, I just love the work of the Colt, and I think we've got a real gun. I really loved his attitude and his want, and he gets into players' faces.
He's not scared to stick up for a player, to stick up for himself, to give it to someone, and I like that. I think you need a bit of that. No, it's not thuggish. It's it's a presence.
He reminds me, speaking of Track, how Track was in his first season, or before his knee injury, and he that sort of a bit of arrogance and a bit of what about me, but also hard at it. And
I think where it's different to Track, and that's just Track's personality, and it's something I do like about him as a person, but I don't think Track has the white line fever like Track. He got a bit of criticism from people on Demonland for shaking Maynard's hand. He often puts his hand out to pick up a guy off the ground, which I sort of like, but I don't like as well. Like, I think Colt wouldn't do that.
No,
do you know what I mean?
He's a bit old school, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's good. It's a wonderful for a person to have a wonderful quality. But sometimes on a football field, you might not want that. I don't know. But that's Track. That's his personality. He's not going to change that.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't make him a better or worse footballer if he didn't do that. So
yeah. One final comment about track is that I find the stuff about criticising track for the brand stuff and wanting to make money out of his social, like I'm not on social media, so I don't know anything about like whatever, but apparently someone said to me the other day who I wouldn't have thought would even know track said, that, guy who knows his cooking or whatever.
Well, he's got almost like a cooking channel sort of does
right.
little clips, and he's leaning heavily into that, and that's fine. Like, why not?
I mean,
but my feeling with all that, as long as it doesn't affect your footy,
who said
I'm not saying it does, but I'm just saying as long as it doesn't, then go for it.
Yeah, of course. But when do we start criticising people for their jobs, or there's, obviously his job's playing footy, but that's your point.
Because we pay memberships every week.
Yeah, but it doesn't give us license to take pot shots for...
No, I'm not taking a pot shot at him. I welcome him. You make hay while the sun shines. Football, the life of a footballer is very, very short.
Exactly.
And some of them don't get that opportunity, and he's making the most of it. So good on you.
And if you reframe that whole thing don't you want him to be, if you say the direction of the club is code for not winning, basically. Like, let's face it, if we were in position to be top 4 and winning the flags, there'd be no talk about the direction of the club, would there? The
inference some people are making with all that is saying that he wants to be part of a successful club that's got a big following and whatever. So if the direction of, if he's not here, I'm not saying him, but if someone's unhappy with the direction of the club, meaning they're going to go backwards and they're going to be a bottom team, and therefore that person won't be able to make that hay while the sun shines. But if you're with a good team, you will be able to do that. So people, I'm just saying, so people on Demonland is taking that as, well, he wants to play for a good team in front of a big crowd so we can increase his following and blah, blah, blah. And he's unhappy with the direction of the Melbourne Football Club because if we're going backwards and going to be bottom 4 and going to have 12 people turn up on a game, he's not going to be able to build his brand.
Well, as
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that is what some people are saying.
As I've talked about a lot, let's agree and lean into known facts. And the known facts are Colton, who I just mentioned, re-signed. Caleb Windsor, one of the most exciting young talents in the AFL, signed when he didn't need to. Bloody Reid hasn't done that, has he? He extended for 2 more years when he could have run out his rookie 3-year, whatever, at his draft. Petty re-signed. Cos re-signed. Langers, one of the most respected players at the club, re-signed. Turner re-signed. Who else? Salo re-signed last year. Am I missing someone?
I'm renewing my membership next year.
That's what we do know. We do know that those players have voted.
And Max
re-signed today. That's right. So, that's what the known facts are. So how about we agree on them? And we don't know. All the rest is supposition about track. It's just And also the idea of Jack Viney leaving the club. What another nonsense.
Well, we're going to talk about Jack Viney and Clayton Oliver in one moment. Let's talk about that now. Let's get into it. Singer says, thoughts on Clary to the Cats and Viney to the Kangas rumours as well. He's referring to the track thing. It's going to be a long off-season. So the Melbourne Demon fans have had more than their fair share of concerns lately, and it's not just the ongoing Christian Petracca saga that's causing anxiety. The potential loss of the other key components of their premiership winning midfield, Clayton Oliver and Jack Viney, have also been a source of growing unease. Rumours have once again started swirling about Clayton Oliver's future, rekindling the speculation that began last off-season regarding a possible trade, despite Simon Goodwin's firm assurance that Oliver would remain a Demon alongside Christian Petracca in 2025. The whispers of a move to the Geelong Cats refused to die down. The speculation has resurfaced, making D supporters increasingly nervous about the stability of their star-studded midfield. Adding to the tension, Jack Viney, a player who embodies the heart and soul of the Demons, has been linked with a potential move to the North Melbourne Kangaroos. The connection is particularly concerning, given that his father, Todd Viney, a former Demon captain, is currently the general manager of football at the Kangaroos. North Melbourne's coach Alistair Clarkson has openly stated that the club is looking to pursue Jack Viney and other experienced midfielders to help mentor and bolster their young, talented core. When questioned post-match about the rumours of his departure, Viney remained non-committal, saying, we'll get through the season and see how it pans out. His response, while not definitive, has done little to quell the concerns of Melbourne supporters who are already on edge. It's worth noting that both Clayton Oliver and Jack Viney, like Christian Petracca, are currently under contract with the Demons until 2030 and 2025, respectively. However, the persistence of these rumours has left fans wondering whether these contracts will be enough to keep their beloved players in the red and blue. Now, a mate of mine texted me while we're on air saying that Lion on the couch heavily implied that a positive announcement on Viney will be coming in the coming days. So, B-Man, could we see a Melbourne midfield next season without Petracca, Oliver and Viney? Can you imagine that?
No. I mean, really, what does Jack Viney want to go to? Jack Viney spent the first 2/3 of his career in a team down mired on the bottom, moored to the bottom of the ladder. Does he really? I don't know North are on the rise, but they're still, even if things go right for them, they're 3, 4, 5 years away from winning a flag. Just leaving aside his red and blue, you couldn't get more red and blue than Jack Viney. Is that performance on the weekend? Does that look like a player who's already thinking about the ruse? I mean, he's leaving aside any of that, as if Jack Viney wants to go to North Melbourne and kick around, the bottom part of the ladder. Speaking of the anti-track move, I want to go to a small Victorian club who may, in 2 or 3 years' time have the perennial discussion about them moving into state or folding. That's what I want to do. He's done that. He's seen that movie. He doesn't want to see it again.
No, he's not going anywhere. Even without this Gary Lyon tidbit.
What was the Gary Lyon tidbit? Sorry, can you?
It was just on the couch. He heavily implied that a positive announcement on Viney will be coming in the coming days. That he heavily implied that. I don't have a direct quote. I'm just going off a text message I received.
And speaking of Jack Viney, the other thing about our, for perspective about our season is that we've had multiple players of our senior core carrying injuries all season.
He's been carrying an injury.
That shoulder, I mentioned it last week. It
happened again during the game,
it's it's clearly there's something wrong. Clary's now gone in for surgery. His hand.
Well, that's the thing. We didn't. This happened after. Did we know Clary was injured last week? I don't think we did.
No, but they they announced, I think, in the surgery on the Monday or something.
Maybe we didn't. I can't remember if we knew or not.
Maxie's had that injury.
But Clary
had broken ribs twice.
There was criticism of Clary, and this is maybe we can talk about it here. There were, that he hadn't been playing well, but he's clearly been injured. That hand has never fully. He's had a plate in it. He just had it out just a couple of weeks ago. He's clearly had a thing, but then there's a lot of people on Demonland have been saying, well, in selection integrity. Why were we playing? Why were we playing him? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm bringing up a Demonland. This is this podcast is an extension of Demonland, so I'm just bringing up issues people have mentioned.
Well, when we do the review, I don't want to get on a rant. I've ranted enough tonight, but is that by any measure, or by most measures, Clary has been one of our better players. He's a Monty for top 10 in the Bluey. I had a look at the player ratings for Champion Data, and he's our 7th highest rated player, ahead of Langdon, ahead of Steve May, ahead of Lever, ahead of McVie, ahead of Windsor, ahead of a bunch of players. That's nonsense, all of that stuff about where he's, obviously he wasn't fit. And I mean, it's an interesting question. There's one about it. It was good to see the pace out of there. But, partly that was a setup, and defensively they were shocking in terms of their structures, I thought. The Suns, that is.
Yeah. I mean, just in regards to Oliver, I don't think the club would trade him. Hopefully
he's not going anywhere either.
The only reason they would is if there were ongoing issues, but it seems like that's sort of under control. He seems very happy. He doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
So if there is anything, then it's the club wanting to move him on.
Yeah, and it's for me, it's like another hypocrisy of the media is that they talk a good talk about all the time, footy club culture. They wrap their arms around people, and it's the best place to be when you're going through personal issues, yada, yada, yada. Yet when a club is clearly doing exactly that with Clayton, who's worked his guts out week in, week out, and he's on a hard road, do they give him credit? Do they give the club credit? No, it's so hypocritical, and it drives me nuts, particularly given so much of the footy media is dominated by ex-footballers who know that, and they all would have stories of players who have been supported by their club super well going through as serious, if not more serious, stuff than that Clary's going through.
Look, the Geelong rumours are clearly Geelong coming out, at least the media asking the question, would you pick? Of course, clubs are going to ask the question of a player
of course,
like Clayton Oliver.
Yeah.
That's where the narrative's coming from. All right, let's go on to the next thing. We didn't get a question about in regards to Alex Neal-Bullen's difficult decision to request a trade back to his hometown to Adelaide for personal reasons, but I thought I'll bring it up because of the person I'm speaking to. After 10 seasons with Melbourne, Neal-Bullen decided that moving closer to family was essential for him and his family's future, a decision that was not made lightly. Neal-Bullen has been an integral part of the Demons, playing 174 games since being drafted in 2014, including a pivotal role in their 2021 premiership win. Despite being contracted until 2026, the club has expressed its understanding and support for this decision, acknowledging the sensitive nature of the situation. Melbourne's general manager of AFL Performance, Alan Richardson, noted the disappointment in losing such a valuable player, but emphasised the importance of supporting Alex Neal-Bullen's personal needs. The Adelaide Crows are considered the front runners to acquire Neal-Bullen, with the trade expected to be discussed further in the coming trade period. So, Bim Man, as president of the Alex Neal-Bullen fan club, you must, like many Demon fans, be devastated by the news. I did put out a welfare check on you when the announcement was made, and you said you were processing at the time. Have you fully processed this?
No. He's overrated player. No, I haven't fully processed it. As I said before, he's legitimately, without any exaggeration, up in my top 10 favourite Melbourne players of all time. I'm devastated he's leaving. I think it's great. It's great. I'm really pleased that Melbourne fans have seen what a quality footballer he is. I think he's elevated his game this year. He'll finish top 5 in the Bluey for sure. Top 3 wouldn't surprise me. I'd give it to him. I would just say, sorry, Max. I would just give it to him. The steam in which he's obviously held. So forgetting one thing I wouldn't want is people, that's been my thing, is that he's an underrated footballer. He's a much better footballer than what people give him credit for. He was maligned for a long time with this idea he's just a role player, but now everyone gets it. Everyone now knows that you need players who can cover the ground. One of the things that I think is most underrated about him or forgotten is that elite athleticism is fundamental to football now. You need 4 or 5 players like Langdon and Nibbler in the team, but he came to the AFL as an elite elite athlete. It wasn't as if he came.
He's in the top 2 or 3 of the time trials every year.
Exactly, and it's the most important quality he has is aerobic. I mean, that's probably equally important. It's the ability to do what they call fast striding, is running at speed over 100 or 80, 90 meters. We're going to really, really miss that aspect of it, and in fact, we're going to have to find someone who replaces that, because really, when you look at the list, Chandler wasn't, an elite athlete when he came in. McVie might be. He's got his running up and going. Langdon is there still, but I think we're going to need to replace that athletic ability, so it's put pressure on. I think the thing that's everyone's spoken about and written about on Demonland is 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗏 and Demon Notes. Demonland is a form of social media. That's right. So I should say Demonland is my one social media outlet. Is as a lot of people have noted, and also in commentary, is the leadership he provides. And I think you could just see the way that the players wanted to win for him. That's partly why I was so confident about the D's winning that game, because I knew that's how they would perform for him. I really think one of the things it's great to see JVR stepping up. I really like the look of Colt. I could see him becoming a leader. Hopefully Track, he'll stay at the club, and so he can use that leadership as well. But Nibbler is like Gus, and he really losing Nibbler compounds the loss of Gus, because both are glue players, and every organisation, every group of people, but in particular footy teams or basketball teams and clubs need glue people, the people who connect disparate groups of cliques or whatever. And I have a feeling that that's been a thread this season. I have a real feeling that we've really sorely missed Gus, because he's the player who connects, and that energy brings, and Nibbler is like that as well. It's impossible really to replace that. It means others are going to have to step up. Someone like Langdon, for instance, maybe becoming a bit more vocal and a bit more sort of forward in his leadership. Of course, you got Maxi, but when we do the season review, we can look at his season, but I'm still processing, still devastated.
Well, my sister, who listens to this podcast each week, and shout out to Em, she did sent me a text wanting to check up on you when she heard the news. So
I thought I saw the thread come up on Demonland and didn't open it immediately, because I thought, oh, what a funny joke, ha ha ha. And because
the first word was not a joke. I think someone in that thread said so.
One of the bad things, and I like to reframe things, was one of the things with the track stuff that I didn't like is that obviously that was driven from inside the club, and feels like a player manager. But where did that come? For that also to come out at the same time, to basically fuel. They came out at the same time, and so. I got a text from a mate saying, "Oh, what's going on? Demonland in crisis, blah blah blah." What's
that sort of, I don't know where it leaked from, and we're not going to speculate on it. But it wasn't meant to. It wasn't meant to come out then. It was going to be at the end of the season.
Yeah,
and come out in the last round or whatever. Whether like with Benny Brown, that they could.
Yeah, one of my favourite Demonland posters, Walking Civil War, made that point. Shout out to 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁𝗀 for all her posting this year, and particularly in the training threads. Awesome stuff, just really terrific stuff. But the positive of it coming out is what happened at Gold Coast. Yep. Because if they'd waited till after the season, even if they played like that, people would have been going, what's going on? It allowed me to process it, but also to start processing it, to go through a process. I'm in the denial phase, but it meant that we can celebrate. And I'm going to go to the footy on Friday night, and my focus is going to be Nibbler. I'm going to go, every time he goes near the ball, I'm just going to go bananas. He's, so I think that's the real positive of it being coming out in the way it did.
Yeah, and that was what it was really nice. To see at the end of the game them celebrating him. That was fantastic. We talked about that before. I agree with you. I think it is, I think bittersweet that it sort of did come out early, but I don't, I think the bad thing about it was that his teammates found out about it the same way we all did because of the leak, and I don't like that.
Yeah, that happens too, doesn't it? Yeah. The other thing I was going to say about the track situation's relevant for Nibbler as well is that this has been going on in footy clubs forever and a day. The difference is how quickly the news cycle loops around, and how quickly sort of rumour becomes fact, becomes, you could write a thesis on how quickly track's gone, from hero to villain, and, that's the redemption or reconciliation narrative will be in full flow soon, because his manager will suddenly go, oh, hold on, we don't want him to be the villain.
Yeah. But I can sort of understand why that has happened, because whenever we've had a player wanting to leave the club, whether it goes back to Scully.
Well, we don't know that.
Further back. I know. I'm just saying that's the perception. That's what people on Demonland are thinking because of the way Track's silence on it. And
that hasn't helped. But
that hasn't helped. So it's just fueled people on Demonland online who are very passionate about the club to go, what the F? That.
But we don't.
Someone said, how do I tell my 5-year-old, their players leaving?
But the difference now, say, even to the Judd, this was compared to Judd's situation. The difference now is there's no time to let it ventilate. Like, for God's sake, it was only announced, like it only came up in the news a week ago. Just everyone take a step back and let it sort of filter through. And, we don't have to have a resolution to everything in a 12-hour cycle of information.
Yeah. All right. Well, we talked a bit about playing with a bit of run and flair, and we've got a question about this, but so we've talked about it, but there is another aspect to it that you can talk about. So Monocular says, thanks, as usual, for your hard work in getting out my very favourite podcast. Where has the run, dare and flair been hiding all year? Will this be the new red and blueprint for the coming season? Go D's. Lazy says, the tape of this game should be replayed all summer. The style and approach we played with yesterday should be the number one approach that we aim for, attacking quick through the middle, yet still keeping good defensive shape. Is this a sign of things to come? And if we don't have the players to execute it with good skills and ball use, should the number one priority be players who can? How many very good to elite kicks do we need to implement this style regularly? That is, players that can hit targets 30 to 50 metres away at least 9 out of 10 times. Beer Man, you've been banging on forever and a day about us not having many, if any, elite kicks in the team. But before you get into that rant, and you've talked about this, you have talked about the style already and the run and the flair. Will we see more of this next year? Was it just the opposition this week that allowed us to do it? And will we see it again against the Pies this week?
It'll be interesting to see whether we see it against the Pies. I think my point before about, it'll be interesting to see what approach the Pies take. But really, if they've got a chance, is to win by 100 points. So I actually think the game will be a really open, flowing game. We've got no reason to play contest. This is exactly the style Goodwin's been trying to implement. I'm adamant, though, come finals. If you watched the showdown, did you watch the showdown, Port Adelaide game?
No, I only saw the big hit from
okay. So, if you want to be a negative Houston Melbourne fan, only Demons. Only if I was channeling the MFCSS of yours, Andy, only the Melbourne Football Club could have one of its players reported for 8 weeks and miss the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season before they become a Melbourne player.
Well, he's not going to become a He's not going to become a Melbourne player because of the other MFCSS reason.
Oh, right. Well, if that's
that's the other thing that this whole thing has created is are we going to miss out on players? Because the media has portrayed us as a basket case, whether we actually are or aren't.
Oh, come on.
We have, whether we're a basket case or not, and you're saying we're not, this media narrative has painted us in that light.
But the players, the player agents, don't live in the media world, in the media bubble. They know if Houston is serious about coming to the Melbourne Footy Club, it would have been
which he seemed to be a week ago.
But it would have been a decision made in June or July this year, right?
He's not
it doesn't mean that therefore he's any guarantee of getting to the club because the deal has to be done. But as if he's going to his decision's going to swing on the noise from the track situation, because why wouldn't it be influenced by what I said before about all the players who have re-signed? Isn't that a concrete evidence of the support the players have in the direction of the club? It is,
but every article I read later in the week was that Houston is now going cold on the Demons because of
Houston has a player manager who knows the games that Connor is playing with his stable of players. So, come on, so that is a bigger nonsense than the track stuff.
Okay.
So the game style, Houston's a good example. So the game style is exactly, come final, what I was going to say about that Port Crows game is that's how the finals will be. It was crack-in, contest, hard, smashing into each other, very little flow, very little run. Some finals, if one side gets on top of the other, then you'll have that fast-flowing games. But for most games, you'll get like the end of that. The other game that was on the weekend that was like that was the Pies Lions game. So, yes, you'll still get bounce off the halfback flank. But if you look at the way the Pies played, is it's cracking in and contest, and that's what will happen come finals. But so, yes, this is the model. This is what Goodwin's been trying to do all season. I think that what you'll get is in why Houston's interesting, and so is Cummins, who we've been targeting, because that's the sort of player we need. Players with elite foot skills, run and carry, who can run off the halfback flank, carry the ball, run through the middle if need be, to the question about, it's a really good question about how many elite ball players do you need? I don't reckon you need more than 3 or 4, and I think we're probably close to that. And we've got Bowie, Laurie probably in that camp, Seston if he can take another level, Colt, Windsor is close enough to elite, sort of somewhere there, McVie, Salo if he keeps going. So we've got enough elite ball users, Cos, even JVR. I think the better way to think of it is how many really poor kicks can you carry, and I think that's where we struggle, is that we have players who turn the ball over too often. You just can't have too many of them. You need your 5, 6 sort of elite players. That's why we're chasing Houston. That's why we're not chasing sort of a meat and potato mid. That's why we're interested in, is it Cummings from GWS?
Yeah, I think so.
So that's the sort of player I suspect we'll target in the off season. And the other need I think we have is obviously a decent sort of second ruck chop out for 𝗪cie, a forward ruck, a legitimate forward ruck option. I think that's definitely a need. So yes, I think that this is the style going forward. Won't matter. Like the thing that won't change under Goodwin, but this is true of all footy clubs, is contest and defence. So that's the problem. The challenge for the footy for clubs at the moment is you play 24 rounds now of one style and get to the finals. And come finals, you still have to play a brutal knock 'em down rugby style game of footy and be able to do it. Like those two models are different. So you need to have your bulls like Petracca and Oliver and, your Clary and your inside mids come finals. They're the ones who win games. And just on that Collingwood game, by the way, is that, and on track, is that we really see, like, it's so easy to forget. So many games, big, tight games are decided by the players with the most, the best players. Like Nick Dacos was extraordinary in that game against the Lions. That's what we've missed. Even if we'd had track in the last half of this season, we'd probably make finals, because there's a good chance we win one of those close games against the Giants or Port or whatever.
Mandalorian says, Jack 𝗪𝗀 was fantastic today, heart and soul, and bleeds red and blue. Please stay, Jack. 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁14 says, captaincy next year. Should we give it back to 𝗪𝗀? He's heart and soul, quiet warrior, never complains, leads by example. Now, I don't foresee any changes in the captaincy for next year. If, as I suspect, Jack re-signs with the Demons, I believe leadership group's going to remain unchanged. Max is already committed to another 3 years as a Demon, will continue as captain, with Jack 𝗪𝗀 serving as his vice captain. The captaincy was entrusted to Max because he excels, as a spokesperson. He's a perfect face for the media. Jack, on the other hand, leads, with his actions on the field, embodying, the spirit of the team. Bleeds red and blue, heart and soul, all that. I desperately hope he stays. I reckon he will. It'd be devastating if he left. I can't even imagine a possibility. And I refuse to accept that reality if it does eventuate. But as to his performance this week, Jack, nothing short of phenomenal. You've talked about the stats. His club faced a tough week with intense scrutiny, whether you believe it or not. There was intense scrutiny, pressure from all sides. And the players, obviously, they can't escape the heat of the media's microscope, and Jack just shattered that net of 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁 that the press had laid in wait for us, ready to pounce had we lost to the Suns. The 30 disposals, 13 contested, 10 score involvements, 9 clearances, 2 goals. He delivered a game that epitomised leadership.
Equal game high ground ball gets.
Just a masterclass. It was superb. Anything you want to add to 𝗪𝗀?
2 things. I loved his flex after he kicked a right footer from the boundary. I don't think I've ever seen him kick a right footer like that before.
Not often.
And he, someone put this on Demonland. I thought it was brilliant. Did he give a bit of a track sort of?
Someone said that. I didn't, because I didn't see the replay. You can't see obviously up close when you're in the game like that, so I don't know. But someone said he did.
Maybe that's a bit of a long bow to draw. But
no, I think he's the last person that would to give a. Are you saying it's giving a finger to track?
No, not giving a finger, just doing a track like sort of flex. But interesting.
I can't see Jack playing.
His disposal efficiency was 76.7. I thought his disposal was brilliant. Player rating, as I've said before, I put a fair bit of stock in this in terms of it as being an objective measure of a performance, as much as anything, because you've got a proper way to compare each player. So the eye test isn't really great for that. Jack Viney was the top-rated player on the ground, 21.7. His predicted rating by Willow on a whole bunch of sort of indicators was 11. So he was our top-rated player. Our next, just ahead of Noah Anderson, who's exactly the sort of player, by the way, that we need. That's who I would go target, is Noah Anderson. And I was really interested to see
𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁.
I always say loquacious, but 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁 was running around in the twos. He's also a player that we could do with, I reckon.
Does Track want to go to the Gold Coast?
Yeah, well, Track can go to the Gold, and we'll take Noah Anderson, or take a bunch of them. So then I thought this was really interesting in terms of what we've been talking about, a club making a statement about unity. Top-rated player was Jack Viney. Next was Christian Petracca, by far his best game of the season, 18.4. His predicted rating was 7.7. Brilliant game by him. Nibbler, 15.8. Predicted rating, 10.7. And here's one for George. I hope you hear this at some stage, George. A predicted rating of 6.5. Player rating of 15.8. Jack Billings, fantastic performance by Jack Billings. Bailey Fritsch, predicted rating of 7.8 was next for us, 15.7, and then Langdon. So our top, top six players in order were Viney, Salem, Nibbler, Billings, Fritsch, and then Langdon, and then Marty Hoare, 13.5.
Yeah, there's a question about Marty. I really like him. We'll get into that.
So our top 7 players were all senior players, and it sort of makes 2 points. One, the sort of leadership and the psyche that they brought into this game, which I just love. But 2, it highlights how important it is to have those senior players playing. And so you don't have to rely on the Disco Turners or the Colts or the Caleb Windsors or the younger players to get the job done, or Howes, who had a good game, I thought, as well.
I think between Howes and Marty Hoare, they had 19 marks or 19 intercept marks, something like that between them. Melbourne put it on their socials, but I'm just going on memory.
And just on that list, so Howes, then it was, let's see, so where is he? In 14th, Maxi. So Kay Chandler was ahead of Maxi on the player ratings. And Trent Rivers was down below that. So, interesting in terms of his game, Maxi, and he's probably desperate for the off-season to rest up that ankle and all the other sort of injuries he has.
Between Howes and Marty Hoare, 19 combined marks. So
that's good.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it, Marty Hoare in a sec. So, but first, Ed Langdon. Scroll says, thought Ed Langdon was outstanding today. He's had a super fantastic season. Unreal that he has signed on and committed to the D's for a couple more years. He was superb. He was everywhere, running up and down the wing. It was a brutally hot day. I was cooking in the sun there. I think it got up to 28 degrees according to my watch. It was very hot. 37 disposals, 9 contested, 8 score involvements and a goal. He's had capped off
660. What is it? 592 meters gained.
Yeah,
his kicking was better this week. 73% disposal.
He's not kicking them on the full at the moment. Yeah. He hasn't.
And what was his time on ground? Just looking.
He did go on the bench at one stage because I did see 2 other wingers at one stage. But yeah,
time on ground 95%. Yeah. So 23 kicks, and as I mentioned before, a bunch of them were uncontested. But yeah, he's been brilliant in the last half of the season, hasn't he?
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Judd McVee. So Lefty says it was great to see Judd McGee get some more midfield minutes finally. So happy for him to snag his first AFL goal as well. We love midfielders that kick goals. We got an opposing view, though, from Demonologist. It's just a Demonologist sent a longer message, and I cut up sort of bits he said about certain players, and this is what he had to say about Judd McVee.
And as for McVee, he seemed to be used in the midfield in this match quite often, but he looked lost and ineffective in that role. I wonder what your thoughts are.
So, I think the silver lining on the injury, before you answer that, silver lining on the injuries to our midfielders this season, that we were somewhat forced to try and fast-track the midfield careers of players like McVeigh and Rivers. And whilst, I've wanted to us to try this for a while, it's great to see Judd line up in the centre bounce from the beginning. I want to see more of that. I didn't, and I had in my notes here that I thought he didn't spend that much time, but now that you say he had 18 centre bounce attendances, I'm really happy with that. He only had 12 possessions, but importantly, he had 4 clearances. And I get that Demonologist thinks that he was a little lost in the role, but he'll only benefit from more minutes in the midfield, and I think we have to persist with that. We've only got one more game this year to do it, but I'd like to see more of it next year. What are your thoughts?
I prefer him to be. I mean, I don't mind sort of the idea of him running on the ball, but I prefer him playing high half back, kicking out from the back half is really, I think, where you take advantage of his kicking. It's been interesting. That's where sort of 𝗍𝗀𝗃, I think, has played his best football. You can tag a player in the midfield a bit more sort of difficult. It's much harder to tag a half-back flanker, for instance. I want him, with his run and carry. I mean, I think it was sort of indication that they're definitely thinking he could play that 𝗍𝗀𝗃 role of coming from half back into the middle.
But that's what I mean. I want to see more of that. I'm not saying him as a midfielder. I just want to see him go through the midfield, add to that roster that we've got that goes through.
I think that's where I would land on him, rather than being a midfielder, is a player who can run through the midfield. I mean, he got 4. Bit of context is Trent Rivers had 6 clearances, sort of roughly the same number of attendances. I just prefer him off the halfback flank. Is that I think mid Colt will end up becoming inside mid. I reckon. There's others who will get their run, but yeah, I think you're right in terms of a player can run through the middle and go on ball. Just very similar to the way the Pies use Nick 𝗍𝗀𝗃.
Now we'll talk about Marty Hore, because Bigfoot says, really impressed with Marty Hore the last couple of weeks. I thought he was doing okay before getting injured early in the year too. What's his contract status going into next season? So I'm a big fan of Marty Hore. So he doesn't do much wrong. Well, no, he's not obviously not an out-and-out star, but he's got a good pair of hands, doesn't panic when the ball's in his hand. He generally uses the ball well. George is our contract status guy, but I looked it up. Marty Hore is a rookie listed player, but I don't know what that means in terms of next season. I'd like to keep him on the list for depth, if for nothing else. What are your thoughts on Marty?
He was great. I thought he hurt us a few times with his kicking last week, but maybe that's
last week.
It's probably a bit harsh because, like we've talked about a lot, is that it really is a massive jump up from you go watch a VFL game like I did the previous week against the Dogs. It's a big jump up to AFL level, just in terms of the intensity and the speed of the game. It's massive. So he really turned around. Speaking of predicted rating, his predicted rating for player rating for this game was 4.1. He had 13.5. One of our sort of top, what was I said before, 7 or 8 players. He went 83% disposal efficiency. I'm not sure what his well, I was about to say I'm not sure what his kicking efficiency was, but he had 16 kicks. He only had 2 handballs. So 83% of almost always disposal or kicks. So we'll give him 80% by foot. That's not bad.
And I reckon our last half, our disposal efficiency was probably better. In the first half, there was such a wind at the ground. There was a swirly wind. It was really, really hard to judge. So I think they adjusted because they were sort of tempering their kicks, because they had worked out if they kicked it too hard, it was going over the heads of people. It was, unless you were at the ground, you probably wouldn't have noticed it. Definitely they readjusted.
The thing I like about Marty Hore is he reads the ball well, and he's he can play big, he can play tall. He's a sort of player that I reckon Tommy McDonald, I thought he was excellent, Tommy McDonald, but he looks like he's another player who's pretty keen for the line, so to speak, and in terms of the end of the season coming. It's been a long season for him, and it's worth noting for Tom McDonald that he's yet another player who had an interrupted pre-season, so no surprise that he's sort of limping to the line a little bit. But Charlie Ballard, who's an excellent intercept mark. He he led the game for intercept marks and had 5. Marty Hoare and Tom McDonald both had 4 intercept marks. And on top of that, Marty Hoare had 2 inside 50s. So, he was damaging in terms of where he got some of those intercept marks. He had 5 intercepts in total. Interestingly, just looking at that, Charlie Ballard had 9 and Tommy McDonald had 9. But, really good game from Marty Hoare. And I don't know what the contract status is. I'm hopeless with all of that stuff.
I don't know with the rookies how it works.
He would have gone a long way to getting recontracted, I reckon.
I'd keep him, as I said, just for depth, if nothing else, because you have a couple of injuries down back and he's a perfect guy to slot in.
And he is also just the sort of another player who was out for, 6 or 7 or 8 weeks with injury?
Yeah. And
he was brought in. It was clearly brought into the footy club to bolster our sort of issue with lack of senior players, So I think he will get, hopefully he will get another contract. And I really thought he was excellent in this game.
Trent Rivers, Travie14 says, gents, this win will no doubt be played down by the media. Only the second time Gold Coast have lost at home, and we did it by 50 points. This is a club, by all reports, may as well shut the doors. Even the commentary was bloody woeful. We were up by 20 points in the third, and all they talked about was Gold Coast and Mac Andrews, who was comprehensively beaten by JVR in all stats. Rivers looked cooked in the midfield role, the midfield role may be catching up with him. His kicking was poor. His short kicking has always been iffy, but a pre-season into him focusing on these things, and I think he's in for a big year next year. Now let's all get to the G this weekend. It's our turn to end the Pies' final hopes. Oh, it'll be sweet. Please let it happen. Well, spoiler alert, we've effectively got a dead rubber on our hands. We've got a voicemail from Demonologist on I almost called him Jared Rivers, Trent Rivers.
Hello, Andy, Binman and George. It's Demonologist here. Well, a win is always satisfying, and it was a good second half, I must admit. But some comments about a few players, if I may. Rivers, he improved as the match progressed, and his desire to win the footy is fantastic. But especially in the first half, he played hot potato footy. Win the ball and give it to a teammate. Any teammate will do, whether this puts them under the pump or not. And he wasn't alone. Bad choices, mistakes, bad kicking and poor decision-making abounded by many in this team.
So, Big Man, do you have any concerns with Rivers playing in the midfield? We've been quite impressed with him, having to fill in on the fly.
I prefer him in the middle than McVie, partly because of exactly that comment from Demonologist. He's another player who's not great with those short kicks. He's got, and he was woeful. I was tearing my hair out for the first 10, 15 minutes. Rivers was one of the main causes of it.
He butchered it this week.
Oh, my God. It just I think I'm not sure if I said it aloud or just in my head, but I said, how come AFL footballers under no pressure cannot hit a 20-metre target?
I think the wind, as I mentioned, played a little bit of a factor into that, but yeah, he did butcher it.
Yeah, but that's exactly right. He worked into the game. So I think I really like him into the middle and also swinging back so that his go is getting depth on his kicks, kick 60 metres every time. That's what I'd tell Rivers. You can only kick 60 metres, and Steve May only kicks 60 metres. So he's been another player that has been fantastic this season, and he will be playing his best footy next season, like a lot of young players.
All right, next one's something we've been talking about. The midfield without Sands, Oliver and Sparrow. So Radish D says, was it just me or did we seem a lot better, not only without Oliver, but after Sparrow went down? Do we usually play too many midfield bulls who can only extract the footy and can't run, chase, apply pressure or execute kicks? It seems to me that the makeshift midfield in the second half against the Suns was made up of players with better kicks and better run. Is this the difference? Is this what the midfield should be? Fewer Viney, Oliver, Sparrow types and more Track, Riv, A and B types. It's pretty amazing how much better we look without Clary. Does the panel think this mentality, it's the selection table, has been that an injured Clary is better than the next replacement? And if so, has this mentality been found out as wrong? So Big Man, you're our midfield expert. Did we look better without the Oliver Sparrow type players? And if you want to comment on playing a clearly injured Clary in preference for the next best fit replacement, you can.
Well, I mean, maybe we'll cover that in the sort of season review because that's sort of worth unpacking. What we did. What I will concede is that it was great to see some leg speed through the middle. I think some credit must go if we're going to knock the midfield coaches and McWalter in particular for some of the structural and setups in previous week. We've got to give them credit for their coaching in this game. I thought it was excellent, really good work. It went to town on shutting down what's his name there, Rao, who didn't really have much influence at all. It was a bit like the sort of reverse for Melbourne games. It seems like there was a heap of times where we, there was space that we ran into and that they weren't sort of being defensively minded at all. One thing I would say, though, is it's sort of a mindset thing in terms of, it was touched on in one of the earlier questions, is that we definitely played attacking, freed, sort of let's go for it footy. And one of the ways that we did that, if you noticed how often, if you watch the replay, look how often 𝗦cie goes ahead of the contest. So in the time, when you're not winning, that's called cheating. But when you're up and about and the opposition's not properly in the game like it should be, you're ahead of the ball, you win the ball, you've got players ahead of the contest. And that happened all game. So we were really rolling the dice on that. If they had got sort of better in terms of their midfield, like Port, for instance, did to us, we couldn't afford to do that so much against Port, but we were clearly not sort of worrying about that. I think that was a huge factor. It was definitely good to see, some of that run through the middle. But the short thing on Clary is, as I said before, is that he was our best. I think he was our best midfielder for the season, and we'll see that in the Bluey.
All right, we got another voicemail from Demonologist on 𝗍𝗀𝗁. I think this is the one.
On 𝗍𝗀𝗁, lauded by so many and so often, but surely we can expect some consistency from him by now. For his age and huge talent level, we shouldn't be seeing displays like against Gold Coast. One disposal to three-quarter time, perhaps three by the end of the match. It's simply unacceptable.
So it was disappointing in terms of stats. So just last week, we were singing 𝗍𝗀𝗁's praise after a stellar performance. This week he did have a bit of a stinker, and that's part of the game, especially for younger players. Consistency can be elusive at times, and it's important to remember that even the most talented footballers, they have off days. And last week, we took a closer look at 𝗍𝗀𝗁's stats over his first 5 years compared them to those of his contemporaries. I can't remember. We got that off Twitter. The results are impressive. He outperformed all of them for those first 5 years. And these players who are now regarded as some of the best in the game, they certainly had their fair share of off games early in their careers too. And it's a reminder, I guess, that development, it's a bit of a journey. And even the greats really don't hit their strides every single week. And 𝗍𝗀𝗁's he's on a similar path, and there's going to be ups and downs, and his potential remains undeniable. I don't think you can throw the baby out with the bathwater. What are your thoughts, Ben?
I think there's a couple of things. Is one thing that let's not forget that it's routinely called the hardest position on the ground to play. So I think that we can give him at least a bit of credit there. His game wasn't as bad as 4.7 was his average. So that it wasn't. He was 20 or something last week, wasn't he? So
what was his pressure stuff like?
His pressure
wise.
What was his pressure?
Because often when he has those stinker days, we look at the pressure and he did some.
So you're right.
But I don't know.
I think he was 7 or 8, so it was okay. Look, he didn't have a great game. One of the interesting things that, where I would rather focus in that he was good in that last quarter, and so he turned it around. And one of the things that, he ended up with, what did he end up with? So, he ended up with 2 kicks and 2 handballs. So, he didn't have a massive. He had 90 metres gained inside 50.
I think someone was manning him pretty closely, like all day.
But, he didn't have a great game, and that's okay. I disagree really that he's inconsistent. So, taking a 2-week sample, okay. But he's been really consistent this season. And one of the things that actually, if you ever do watch the replay, Andy, that it's interesting is that, just how much I hate the ex-footballers who dominate the footy media, because when he came out at quarter time, he set up a goal or kicked a goal, did he? I can't remember. He set up a goal and players got around him. And one of the boneheaded commentators goes, he must have got a rocket at half time. He must have got a real sort of rocket, and he's come out and responded. And I thought to myself, what a load of bollocks.
Was that 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗰?
As if in modern footy, Goody's going to give, it's 20 years or hopefully 10 years since a coach at 3 2 at a time, when you're leading the game, singles out a player for a rocket.
That had to be 𝗟𝗀𝘀𝘁𝗰. That is such an 80s
I think it was 𝗟𝗻. I mean,
viewpoint.
And
because 𝗍𝗀𝘀𝗁 was more likely to have been encouraged by
exactly,
Goody. I mean, that's Goody's philosophy, rather than fire and brimstone.
Exactly.
Whether you agree with either tactic of coaching, or
totally. The number one rule of coaching is public praise, private criticism. I mean, come on, And
we got breaking news. 𝗦cie has re-signed with the Demons.
We've got all the breaking news here. Very good. But 𝗦cie, speaking of Jack 𝗦cie, he was asked in the post-match interview, straight on the ground, said, so 𝗍𝗀𝘀𝘁 got a rocket and played well, or did he get a rocket, I think was the question. And 𝗦cie was like, what? No, he didn't. Of course he didn't. Like, exactly as you said, Goody would have said, get around him, fellas. Come on, 𝗍𝗀𝘀. You've had a quiet game. Doesn't mean that you can't have an impact. And he comes out and has an impact in the team. Get around him. I mean, it's just, it was everything that's wrong with the football media, I thought.
Yep. So we got here Demons vice captain Jack 𝗦cie to spurn Kangaroos and re-sign with the D's. Melbourne vice captain Jack 𝗦cie is on the brink of a new long-term brink. So he hasn't. This isn't official. This is Herald Sun. So do you want me to continue? Brink of a new long-term contract that will shut down any speculation about his future at the club. 𝗦cie's management is in the final stages of locking in a new deal past 2025, which would show his faith in the club despite a rocky second half of the season. 𝗦cie was not as definitive about his future as he might have been in the weekend Fox Footy's post-match interview.
On the ground.
He's maintained his faith in the club despite being blah, 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 blah. They don't have any information. I think they're just going off Gary Lyons' comments.
No, that sounds very much like a player manager pre. We'll get it tomorrow. We'll get it tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, let's move on because 2 hours in. We're still got more. 𝗍𝗀𝘀𝘁𝗁𝘀𝗁 says, hello, panel members. Thanks again for your... you know what? It's not George that makes this show longer.
It's you, Andy.
𝗍𝗀𝘀𝘁𝗁𝘀 says, hello, panel members. Thanks again for your insightful... Well, mind you, we did have a lot to talk about the Clary thing. Yeah, okay. Hello, panel members. Thanks again for your insightful thoughts, deep analysis, and clear love of the Melbourne Football Club on your weekly podcast. This week, I'd like you to discuss the worth of Adam Tomlinson. 3 areas that interest me are: 1, how good is Goody? I know I'm preaching to the converted with you, B-Man, but keeping Tomlinson on the list when half of Demonland wanted him gone and slotting him into a successful defensive system is very good coaching and list strategy. 2, 3/4 of Demonland thinks Blind Freddie would have played Petty back when Stephen May went down, but Goody again stuck to his guns, much to the detriment of Goody's too rigid cohort, and kept Petty in the 3 emerging forwards group and was once again rewarded for his thinking with one of the D's best wins of the year. Number 3, Tomlinson has slotted in seamlessly to the full-back spot in the absence of May in the last 2 weeks. I know he has his weaknesses, but his short passing and defensive work has been very good. I can't believe a team like Gold Coast or many other teams wouldn't try to pick him up, and how hard should we try to keep him on our list given the age and increasing fragility of Stephen May? Given the crazy offers last year for Mackay, who went to Essendon and has been actually very good, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure Tomlinson isn't just as good. So, B-Man, your thoughts on Tomlinson, Goody resisting the urges and wishes of Demonlanders to replace May with Petty and using Tomo to seamlessly slot into the defensive unit?
Tomo, they'll want to keep him at the club, really. It's on Tomo. I don't know his contract status either.
I'll look it up while you talk.
So... they'll want to keep him. There's no question about that. I feel for him. He's sort of, he's that classic player who's swinging between the sort of VFL and seniors, but, maybe he'll get more footy next year because maybe they'll need, it depends a little bit where Steve May's at, I think, in terms of his back and his injury, his ribs. I agree that other clubs, he'd get a home at another club and be playing regular, best 22 minutes, I think.
He's out of contract at the end of this year and he's an unrestricted free agent, meaning if he wants to go...
I totally understand if he wants to go. He's probably not going to get to a one of the sort of contenders, I wouldn't think. He might get to, who knows? I don't know. Maybe someone like the Suns although, they're pretty well stocked for defenders as well with Collins and Ballard and others. I thought he played well on the weekend. He's a one-on-one player. That's right about his kicking. He's reliable from the back half with his kicking. So, it's really up to Tomo. I'm positive that the club will want to keep him. He's a great trainer. He's a good leader. It's really whether, we'll see. He might want to try the market, and I wouldn't begrudge him if he decides that that's what he wants to do, not one little bit.
All right. D-Minion says, forward line was on song today. 10 goals from the three big guys. Disco 4 and 3 apiece from Rui and Pets. Disco has a lovely pair of dukes. Clunks everything. D Old Fart replies, 100% agree with D-Minion. My questions for the panel. Is Disco the long-term key position forward we have been craving? Is a forward line comprising of JVR, Petty and Disco an important part of our future? Red and Blue Rising replies, don't mind these three getting more game time together. Will only make the forward line stronger, at least until Jefferson is ready. Then Petty can go back when May is done. Monocular says, Disco is only 22 and at 194 centimetres. With strength, mobility and ground skills, there is certainly lots to look forward to. El Diablo says, how much do you love the JVR Petty Disco forward connection? Lots of aggro in them, which you have to love. And Lazy says, with all hands on deck, is there room for both Petty and Turner in a forward line that also has JVR and Fritsch, or will one of them be likely dropping back next year? And we've got a voicemail from a demonologist.
Turner was a real positive, a real presence up front.
That's all. Yeah, to say a clip that from his thing. So our forward line was it was functioning. It was firing on all cylinders this week. Seemed to be more open forward line, and perhaps that was a failing of the Suns, whereas a lot of teams...
It's a function of how quick you're getting the ball in quick.
Yeah, but a lot of teams clog up... but a lot of teams clog up our back line, maybe because our forward line, because perhaps we're a bit slow. That's what I'm saying, because we're slow. We're slow playing. And then I was going to go on to say that with some run, dash, dare, flair, whatever, that we were talking about, that we played, the way we played allowed us to get the ball in quick enough to the advantage of our forwards. 10 goals from the big three is definitely what we want to see in 2025, Ben.
Yes, apologies for interrupting. The Pearl will be sagely nodding, or George. Maybe it's George will be sagely nodding about my interrupting. Right. And apologies also for this recycled joke, but former backman went into overdrive. Former backman Turner went into overdrive is what I meant to say, and I think that was a breakout game. I'd forgotten, because they made this comment that he was a rookie pickup. I'd completely forgotten that, and so he's only been in the system for 2-3 years, AFL system. He's another preseason under his belt. He's going to be a monster, that kid. He's only 22. He's going to be
such a good pair of hands.
Yeah, he clunks them. When he's 24 or 25, I think he's going to be, and I love him. He's such a competitor. I thought he was terrific. I thought that was as close as you're going to get in the modern game to a breakout game. Awesome. And I thought Petty was just about his best game in terms of his marking. I can't believe how underrated Van Ruin is. Dwayne Russell was talking about, next year, the fourth year is the year for the big foot talls, which really will be also sort of, it's probably a way to think of Disco. It's his third year next year, really, in the system. So, but, he's a year older than JVR. But I don't know what Dwayne Russell's talking about and he was comparing him to 𝗟𝗚𝗃 in his first year kicking along, and he's had an awesome year this year, JVR, and he does something that Mara 𝗟𝗚𝗃 doesn't do. He rucks, and just looking at the comparison. So this year. I agree that 𝗟𝗚𝗃 is a better player at the moment. He's a year more advanced. Both have played 20 games. 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 7.69 player rating, Van Rooyen 6.69, so just about there. Disposals are almost exactly the same. Contested possessions 6 to 4.8. Possessions in total almost the same. Marks 4.5. Van Rooyen averages 4. Contested marks 1.9 to Van Rooyen's 1. That's probably his weakness in his game, his contested marking in some respects, but I maintain part of that is because he's gassed half the time from rucking. 43 goals 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 has kicked. So 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀's a year in front of where Van Rooyen is. 29 he's kicked Rui this year, averaging 1.5 to 2.2. This is where Van Rooyen is awesome. He's averaging 1.9 tackles per game. 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀's only 1.4, not only 1.4, and 8 pressure acts to roughly the same 9.2. So he's tracking fantastically as a gun forward. And so hopefully Jefferson kicks on and, forwards aren't the issue that we've got at the moment. And I think, sort of that point that we Dutch demons were raised in Clayton Van Oliver, which is an awesome posting name, I reckon, is that it's sort of building for the future and always looking to build, and that's where Goody's at. So he's played these players together and they'll be there to next year, and Jefferson will be looking to make his debut round in the first part of the season next year as well. So looking really positive up forward.
All right, we've got a roaster. A final word from him from the match. I saw this message late and he had a lot to say. I didn't have time to edit it down. So here's roaster, and then big man, anything you have to say regarding anything that he has to say. He talks about, one thing he does talk about is about breaking tackles. So that might be something you listen out for and you might want to talk about. So here's roaster.
G'day guys, roaster here. Great win from the boys. Really good energy. I think apart from the first quarter, which was really sloppy from both teams, I thought, pretty crazy. Showed some real energy, some real intent, which I don't think we've seen in the last few weeks. And 𝗫ecie, just wow. Let's hope he's hanging around. That's probably the only thing that's got me worried. I just want to see the end of the trade period now. I just want to get to the end of the year, see the end of the trade period and move on, because it can be pretty crazy this time of year with all the, sort of movements or the anticipated movements. But, it's going to be tough to see. So I guess that's the question for the day. Who do you think's staying? Who do you think's going? But looking at that game, that was really good. Great to see, as Goody would call it, scoreboard nourishment. That really helps, doesn't it, when you can continually kick goals from effort, and it just makes it easier to keep giving that effort. Milkshake, I thought, was great, showed his class. Fritsch worked a lot. Juddy in the guts was really good to see, and his first goal was fantastic. I think Colt really showed some good sides as well. He was working really hard. He got the ball a lot and probably just needs to work on that finishing, doesn't he? But apart from that, really good. Just got to be a touch cleaner. And that first quarter, like I was saying, the skills from both teams were just horrendous. But the other thing I'd like to know, if anyone's got some ideas, we seem to be getting a lot of tackles broken. So we go to tackle and the other team just breaks away. I'm not sure if that's an intent, an effort, or a strength sort of conditioning thing. And it seems we struggle to break tackles and we struggle to lay tackles. So don't know what that's from. But anyway, boys, have a great one. And who do you reckon's going? Who do you reckon's staying? Hopefully everyone stays.
All right. Anything you want to add on that tackling point? Is that something you've noticed?
Well, only in the sense that it just cannot be understated, the impact of having so many young players running around. Like, it just sort of logic suggests that younger players are going to, one, find it harder to stick tackles, two, they're going to find it harder to break out of tackles themselves. So, we've got a lot of younger players kicking around. I thought our tackling wasn't too bad on the weekend. Generally, though, the tackling, players across the AFL are getting better at sort of escaping tackles, I think. I'd say that a big factor is young players. In terms of players leaving, we'll leave that till the review.
We've talked about that anyway. So
just on the nourishment, though, one of the key factors, again, for the millionth time, is kicking accuracy. once you put them through the big sticks, then that's where your nourishment comes. So it was awesome to see how accurate our set shots were in particular.
We're not going to dwell too much on the 𝗚cie game. They played their last game of the season. They were unceremoniously thumped by the Gold Coast
better
Suns
about that game of footy.
in the curtain raiser to the Demons by 88 points. Ben Brown kicked 6 goals, 1 from 10 touches and 5 marks. McAdam had 12 disposals and 6 marks and kicked 4 goals. Andy Menzies-Wakefield marked his return to 𝗚cie after 6 games at AFL level, and he was the side's leading disposal getter with 35 possessions to go with his 9 marks and 3 tackles. The team was beaten in the ruck, and this impacted on midfielders Kynan Brown, 21 disposals, 5 clearances, Bailey Laurie, 20 and 5, 𝗏𝗏 Woden, 13 disposals and 1 goal, having limited effect obviously they had limited effect on the game. Youngsters in Jed Adams, Matthew Jefferson, Luca Kentfield and Will Varell were all quiet as their season slowly came to an end. It's a horrible year for the 𝗚cie Demons, in which they only won 5 out of their 18 games and finished the season in 17th place out of 21 on the ladder. And that's all we'll say about that. Let's get on to the injury list. The Demons did not get through their match unscathed, with Tom Sparrow being the latest midfielder sidelined with an ankle injury. He will not play in this match against the Magpies. News from training today is that Stephen May, who despite wearing the no contact hat, has declared to one of our intrepid track watchers, Walking Civil War, when asked whether he will play this week, he said, "Effing oath I am." Reports also state that Caleb Windsor is out of his moon boot and could have been playing this week, but they're being cautious with our young, talented wingman, so he will not be returning this week. So going into changes, Smurf says Sparrow is our latest casualty in the midfield. Surely this means Judd McVie will get some more midfield minutes this week. Andy Menzies-Wakefield raked up 35 posies in the twos. Will he get a call up this week, possibly to replace McVie? Any other changes for the Pies game? Can't see Benny Brown getting a swan song even after 6 goals in the twos, considering the 10 goals from our key forwards, considering our 10 goals from the key forwards against the Suns. Pingu says, would love for the club to give 3-goal premiership hero Benny Brown a proper send-off this week, as he is likely to retire at season's end, which he has announced his retirement. Will we give him a farewell game this week, or is it just not an option off the back of a 10-goal haul from our key position forwards in a game where they get another free hit to show their wares and practice the setup for 2025? So, big man, who comes in, who goes out? Particularly if Stephen May says he's in, and I don't know if he is ready and whether they should risk him or not. But if he's in, does Tomo, who we just talked about, get the unlucky kickback?
I think we'll approach this game like I have no doubt how we'll approach this game, and it'll be to win the game of footy. And that's how we should be approaching it. Any talk of gifting a game for Benny Brown, as much as I think he's been awesome, seems like an awesome bloke. I really, he'd be in my top 3 or 4 people I'd have a beer with or have lunch or dinner with at the Melbourne Footy Club. We'll talk about him at sort of the season review. There's no way I can see Goody selecting him, that he'll be hell-bent on winning this game of footy, which means if Steve May's available, he'll come back in. I mean, if he's not, they may not want to risk him, which in a way I'd prefer him not being risked. But if he's good to go then and wants to play, they'll play him. Is that at the expense of Tomo, potentially? So the other one is there was talk on Demonland about giving Lockie Hunter a game to get him to 200. And as I posted on, this is not really my normal sort of style, but I'd be livid if they picked Hunter. Livid, because he's been a massive disappointment. I know he's had injuries this year, but he had a great first half of last year. But we've needed senior hardened players who could stand up for us this year, and he didn't. And I know, as I said, that he had soft tissue injuries, but that I'd be livid, and it just won't happen. There's no way Simon Goodwin picks Hunter this week. So in terms of May comes out, maybe Tomo comes out, I think that it'll be Laurie or AMW who come in for Sparrow. It'll be interesting to see which way they swing, but AMW would free up. It would free up it would free up McVie to play in the middle more. The other one is 𝗍𝗲. 𝗍𝗲's been sort of in and out. He had an all right game, I think, on in that in the Suns debacle. So it'll be one of those three players. Like for like, Sparrow. The closest to that is maybe Laurie, maybe 𝗍𝗲. I actually wouldn't mind seeing 𝗍𝗲 have a run on the ball. Actually, he doesn't thrill me as a defender, and I'm not sure he's got the wheels as a winger. So I wouldn't mind seeing him get some time on the ball. Maybe this isn't the match for it, but I fully hope we set this week up to win, and that's what I expect we will, and that we go into the preseason on a high.
Yep. I agree, but let's get into the preview proper in what is now effectively a dead rubber between traditional rivals and Collingwood, Melbourne and Collingwood. Both teams will surely want to finish their season with a win to bank some pride. Sam6172 says, how do we beat the Pies? Traditionally, we cut off corridor and smash them with pressure. Is that enough? Has their game plan evolved, or is it pretty much the same as last year? Must admit I haven't been watching the Pies as much this season. Travie14 says, how do you think we will perform this week? Can be a big ask fronting up after travel and a game in hot conditions. Last game of the year. Hopefully training is just walking laps this week. And we've got a couple of voice messages, one from Demonologist and one from Noah, that I'll play back to back.
So, lads, the question of sorts is that we shouldn't get too excited by this match, should we? Had we met a determined and interested Gold Coast with more will and desire, which seemed to evaporate in the Gold Coast heat, I'm not sure we would have won it all. And I certainly don't expect Collingwood to wilt next week. And if we have the first quarter like we did against Gold Coast against Collingwood, then the game will be over by quarter time. Anyway, thanks for the pod, guys.
It was Demonologist. Now we'll go from Noah.
Hi, this is Noah from Brighton. I think Collingwood will be an interesting game. Unfortunately, I can't come because I'm working as I'm a nurse, but it would be really good if we could stick it right up the Pies. And that, I think, would finish off our year on a high note from a pretty dismal 2024. Love the podcast, guys, and hopefully Melbourne can start back in the new year refreshed with a fit team and no injuries. Love the Demons. Love the podcast. Thanks so much, guys, for a great effort this year. Appreciate it.
So, B-Man, how are we going to secure bragging rights against the Pies this week?
I reckon Demonologist is that. He's totally on point there, Noah. Absolutely right. It's time for us to beat the Pies this week. We owe them. I disagree with Demonologists. Sure, we were poor in that first 10 minutes of the first maybe 15 minutes of that game against the Suns, but we were terrific after that. And I've watched a lot of the Pies this year, and they've not been as impressive, obviously, as they have been in previous years. We've got a lot of data now. They've almost a full season's gone. They've won exactly one more game than us, and they've got a lower percentage, which is telling. We win this game.
They've actually drawn 2 games, so they've won less than us.
Okay, so they've won. Okay, they've drawn. That's a good point. They've won less than us. That's right. So, not just bragging rights, is that I want to finish above them on the ladder. I want to put the bloody Pies down into what they'll fall. If we win this game, they'll fall down to 12th, potentially, depending on what happens.
You're costing us draft picks here.
I could care less about draft picks. I want to finish on top of the Pies, who won the flag last year. And where is the criticism of that club who have failed, right? And of course they've had injuries, but so have we. We've had injuries this season. So, and I totally disagree with Demonologists in terms of them. They're not going to run us off the park. They have not done that. They've been hopeless starters this year, Pies. And in fact, because I don't think they've ever got fully fit, certainly not in their optimal condition. And they like that game against the Lions was a perfect example of the benefit of the crowd behind you. That you could feel their energy in that game. It was a great game of footy to watch, actually. And I think the way we'll play, it'll be interesting. I think the way to play them is to attack and run like we did against the Suns and try to exploit their fitness situation. So I expect you'll see a game very similar tactically to the one that we saw on the weekend. The marking will be a key issue for us. I think that's a really critical thing when we're up and going, marking in terms of contested marks down the line and controlling it. I think 𝗟𝗄𝗃 will be motivated to have a huge game after a relatively quiet game this week. 𝗍𝗲 will bounce back. I'm really looking forward to this game. I expect that we'll play a fast attacking footy. It sets up for a really high-scoring game or a potentially high-scoring game because Pies' only mathematical chance of making finals is to beat us by 100-odd points. And so surely from the get-go they'll look to attack, which will mean potentially lots of turnovers. If we can minimise the amount of turnovers we do and go to work on their turnovers, we could really go to work on them. So I'm pretty confident this week. I won't say really confident. It does depend a little bit on how we pull up after that heat. I think that's a legitimate.
Yeah, it's going to be a factor.
But both teams are coming off a 6-day break, and that was a super bruising game of footy, the Brisbane Lions Pies game. And the other factor is the psychological drop-off. We've already dealt with not making the finals. That's what the current Pies team is now. This team of dealing with this week is really we can't make it. So we won the flag this year, and now we're not even in the 8. So we go in with a psychological advantage. They've got nothing to play for. We've got something to play for, which is to put the Pies back in their box. I think we will. Looking forward to the match. I think we'll look to run. Hopefully, those our disposal efficiency is as good as it was this week. It's going to be a bit more challenging with pressure, but there's no way they play with the intensity they did against the Lions.
All right, we've got one last thing. We've got a voicemail from 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗃. I'll play for you now.
G'day, boys. It's 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗃 here. Good job running the ship this year, given the tumultuous season we've all been through. I'm going to be real brief. I know I've pissed off half of Demonland with the little thread I put up, but I'll give you 2 words. It's a big game this coming Friday. Our season's done, but we can really stick it right up the arch enemy. So, turn up. Get there. Give us some support. It'll make a difference. You might be disgruntled with the club and the players, but I tell you what, they haven't thrown the towel in, so just turn up.
I am 100% with 𝗟𝗏𝘀𝘁𝗃, both to beat the Pies and also for every Melbourne fan who loves football and loves heart and soul players, this will be our last chance to see Alex Neal-Bullen at the G. I'm tearing up even at the thought of it. And so if for no other reason, get along to the footy this week, and every time that man goes near the football, go bananas.
Well, I'll just give you a bit of background. 𝗟𝗏𝘀𝘁𝗃 did ignite a passionate discussion on Demonland following the GWS game. He challenging Melbourne supporters on their reason for not attending that match. And despite his effort, it seemed the message didn't quite resonate, as the turnout for our game against Port Adelaide a few weeks later was similarly underwhelming.
And we could have won that game if more bloody Demons fans turned up.
And I suspect that posting this on Demonland is akin to preaching to the choir. Most members of the forum are diehard fans who rarely miss a game, rain or shine. The real challenge lies in reaching the broader fan base who might be less consistent in their attendance. And looking ahead to this week, I do feel that the turnout could be just as disappointing. The match is essentially now a dead rubber, and I doubt we'll see much enthusiasm from the D's faithful, and I hope I'm wrong, but it's not just us. I expect many Collingwood supporters might opt out. It's not their home game, so they might opt out and watch from the comfort of their homes or shared board houses. What do they call them? Forgot the word. Anyway, especially since it's not a Pies home game. It's a real shame because halfway house, that's what I was looking for.
Like 1932 depression.
It's a real shame.
Sociological gags.
It's a real shame because if both teams were still in finals contentions, we could have had a blockbuster crowd, generating significant revenue for the clubs. And it's just a shame. And make matters worse, we'll likely be outnumbered by Pies fans once again. So to all D supporters, listening to this, and I know I'm probably still preaching to the converted because anyone listening to this is probably going to be going anyway. So make the effort to get to the game. Show up, support the team. Let's not leave our boys hanging out there with a sea of black and white in the stands. Big man, I think we're going to leave it there for tonight. We've gone almost longer than the game, I think we have. We did have a lot to cover. So we'll be back next week.
For the first time in 5 weeks.
And we won. And we had a lot of people listening live. So that's fantastic. Thank you to everyone who did listen live. If you do want to listen to us live each week, head on over to demonland.com on Monday nights at our new earlier time of 7:30 p.m. Thank you to our 5-star reviewer on Apple Podcasts. That was Praise Be. Thank you. Thank you to our voicemailers, Demonologist, Rosestar, Noah, and Doug Reamer. And thank you to our callers that we had all the way from Amsterdam. That was Clayton Van Oliver and Dutch Demons. Hope you're enjoying the beers. Have one for me and Bin Man, and for George too. And your questions and comments, they do form an integral part of the show. So thank you to our Demonland posters who did submit those questions and comments. Thank you to Red Jacket, Singer, Monocular, Lazy, Mandy, Laurie, and El Diablo 14, Scroll, Lefty, Radelaide, Bigfoot, Travi14, Radish, D-Rev, Despicable Me, D-Minion, D-Old Fart, Red and Blue Rising, Oh My D's, Smurf, and Pingu. And thank you to my co-hosts, George
Andy,
and
thank you. Hold on before you thank me. Thanks also in the chat room to Wise D-Man, Terence Langley. From Brussels. We're going very international. Dutch Demons was in there as well when Queanbeyan Demon. Queanbeyan's not quite as sexy as Brussels or Amsterdam, but it's probably quite a nice place as well.
Thank you to my co-hosts, Binman and George, who isn't here tonight. And thank you to you, our loyal listeners. Don't forget, leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from. And we'll read out on next week's show. Go Demons!
Red Leggers!
Come on, Demons!